I
That was a
love
Gordon
Johnny
Ramsay
Rotten.
right there.
There we go.
Did you see Johnny Rotten in his shirt, Gio?
Yeah,
Oh
he was
yeah, yeah.
wonderful.
John Lydon, based and red pilled John Lydon.
Based red pilled. Yeah.
He knew about Jimmy Savile before everyone else. He knew.
I remember
Oh,
the one
yeah, of
interview
course he
where
did.
he's like, Trump, he really goes at the media and absolutely love it. I adore him for that. So he's based red pilled, Sex Pistols.
Well, there
Well,
was that.
I saw him.
Yeah, he's a
I
very
saw
smart.
him punch Kelly O'Killerick, whatever, the guy from Block Party, on the backstage at Summer Case Festival 2008. I was there, and apparently, like, Kelly was bothering John, and like this craziness ensued in the backstage, and basically, like, all the youngsters, like all the guys from the like young bands like Kaiser Chiefs, Block Party, they were kicked out, and like the Sex Pistols stayed in the backstage until morning just drinking. And like they owned the place.
Well, when it comes to punk music,
It
like
can't be
I think of something like G.G. Allen or Johnny Rotten, people that are supposed to be against the system. So it would make sense that if the system is so much against somebody like Trump, then anybody who would be, you know, against that system, they would be in a way, if not for Trump, then at least against this kind of mockery that's being made out of today's media. Like they'd expose a lot of the
Aesthetic sympathy,
hypocrisy.
Lev.
Well,
a
yeah.
lot of punk, I suppose, is about being provocative deliberately. I mean, if you look at the early 70s, you know, the real 70s punks, you had people even like Susie Sue from Susie and the Banshees wearing like swastika armbands and things, and she's Jewish, you know.
Yeah.
Nelson was a gas,
deliberately
guys.
provocative.
By the way,
Like-
I did not get a chance to make an intro yet, so this is the intro. We are live. Welcome everybody to another BTR stream. I am your host, Lev Polyakov, and with me is Lady Asta for the first time, and Matthew the Stoat for the first time, and Hermes Thurston for the first time. And as always, we have the great Geo and the great Jugs. Welcome everybody. And today we're going to be talking about aesthetics. And Geo, you are doing something very special for this stream. Can you talk a little bit about it?
Yes. Let me show you. Let me reverse the camera. So let me hold it up.
And don't forget to subscribe, new people who are watching, and go to Patreon. Here we go.
Look.
So who is this guy?
I am painting Ethan Ralph, passed out drunk on the beach, the Gunt himself. I'm going to be painting him hopefully in the most monstrous Francis Bacon way I possibly can, because he deserves it. So I got my palette out right now and my preliminary sketch. So let's rock and roll. I feel it's fitting for the topic actually, but you know,
Definitely.
and I'm here with all my friends, so hopefully I could show off a little bit, do a little bit of speed painting. So I don't know if it's going to work, but we'll see. And like always, like last time, if someone donates, I would think, let me see, at least $115 in crypto, I will send this to you. So there you go.
And how do you donate? You can donate in two ways. You can either go to streamlabs.com/LevJules on the lower right-hand corner, or you can go to cryptocurrencycheckout.com. I'm going to post both links right now. Also, Bernard, you're saying, Lev, your mic is making a bit of noise. I understand. There's something that's been always going on with my mic. I'm happy you were somebody who was honest enough to say it. I know that there is something that's going on with my mic. I probably have to keep it further away from me while I'm speaking and just speak louder, because it's just one of these things that I gotta learn. That just let me know how I'm doing. If it's still bad, then I'm going to lower down the levels and we'll work it out. Anyway, without further ado, I'm gonna post that link. But Matthew, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your work?
Well, there's not much to tell really. I'm just an artist. I just always sell myself as I'm just an artist. I'm interested in traditional art, I suppose, and then the way, you know, history and mythology plays into art. And you know, I'm a self-taught artist as well. I definitely define myself as a self-taught. I don't know what you'd call that, sort of
autodidact.
Autodidact, there you go. That's the kind of a dirty word these days, but I mean, I don't know. I take pride in it, I suppose.
Why do you think it's a dirty word?
I'm just an artist. Well, because I think when you have autodidacts, it's kind of associated with a lot of pseudo intellectuals on the internet who have like large stacks of books and think they're smarter than everybody else, don't they?
But relative to who?
You know, I think.
Like, I still know, like, are the academics still smarter than most of these pseudo-intellectuals, or are they more or less at a higher level? Like, at least the fans...
I think that it's about structures of learning, really, isn't it? I suppose, like, because we used to have a lot of respect for the academic tradition in art, and the way that kind of dissolved has led to a lot of artists kind of lacking a sort of structure in the way that they learn art. And that's where you get a lot of this, I don't know, subjectivism in the way that artistic ability is judged these days.
But it's been kind of dissolved in academia, though. Myself. Like, it's been dissolved in academia, too, or no? Like, I remember going to School of Visual Arts.
Well, I suppose Gio, he's actually been in academia.
Yeah. Like, Gio, would you say that at least when it comes to the arts, it's dissolved or not dissolved? It's still there. Like, I know when I went to SVA, which is an art school, there was not as much precedence on, at least in animation, on the actual illustration. Like, either we had people who, right out of the gate, drew really, really well. Like Rebecca Sugar, I was in the same class as her, and I don't think there's a difference at all between Rebecca Sugar before she went to SVA with Rebecca Sugar after she went to SVA. Like, she was just as talented going in as going out. So
are you saying they're useless at teaching though then?
Well, I mean, okay. There were some good classes. For example, perspective. That was a really good class. And the drawing classes, I mean, you had models there that you can draw, but it did feel like most of it was pretty much the students for themselves. Like, here you have the models you can draw, and you can get out of that what you will. But other than that, again, it's like, I think the same thing could have honestly been done if I would have hired somebody to teach me perspective, just to go over all the principles, and I would have learned perspective, Like, I don't see the point of having to spend money for this kind of thing as opposed to just taking individual things.
Just quickly, even there, if you say, how I someone to teach me perspective, even there's a sort of a hierarchical structure of learning, which is what the 19th century academic tradition was really there to give. It's a lot different, I think, trying to pick up a book and say, this is how I'm going to learn and teach myself representational accurate drawing and perspective and all these complex things. It's a lot different doing that, trying to do it yourself, than actually going to a place and having someone teach you.
But when you go
No, go ahead, Lev.
Well, when you go to a place and have somebody teach you, I don't see the point of having all this bureaucracy in between you and the teacher.
Well, the onus should be on you actually be taught, I suppose, isn't it? It's not you go there and you choose whether you want to learn. It's where you go there and say, well, this is where you're, it's not up to you. This is what we do here. Whereas I went to Chelsea Art College, for example. I went to Chelsea Art College for 1 year. I did what they call a foundation course in art. And that's basically, you just go in there and they just basically say, here's a few very loose prompts or briefs or something, and just basically do your art, interpret the brief. And I don't remember once there ever being, somebody sitting down and say, oh, this drawing is wrong, or this is kind of inaccurate, or there's some kind of foundational thing that you need to improve on. And that's what I personally was looking for the whole time that I never actually got. I think that's what led me to be quite disillusioned with the way they teach art in the University of the Arts London. But that's not a universal thing. Obviously, that's one way of teaching art. It's just the more common way nowadays, I think.
It doesn't make sense for you to spend money on that, though, because, back in the USSR,
no, it doesn't. It certainly doesn't.
Back in the USSR, what my parents used to do, like the background behind me and also the picture that you see to the right side, and if anybody wants to contribute to the chat that is in our Discord channel, there is a link to our Discord in the bottom of the description of this live stream. But anyway, and you could post images and memes and stuff, write text, and it's going to be displayed on the screen. Anyway, this picture that my dad drew, it is his version of Esmeralda from, Notre Dame de Paris with her lovely-looking crystallized goat. And this is something that my dad had a natural knack for doing, but the way that they did it is they organized a lot of these, like this is actually how he met my mom, they organized a lot of these in-house art classes that didn't have any teacher and didn't have any bureaucracy. It was just a bunch of teenagers or young adults gathering together and hiring a model, or one of them contributes to being a model in most of the cases, and they just draw them, just like one person out of the group volunteers to hold a pose for a long time, and that's how they got better at it. So I hope that something like this could be in the future, like after COVID, that people wouldn't spend all this money, but they could just get together and draw each other, and maybe have some ascended masters from the internet judge their work or something, but make it more of a community thing than spending this ridiculous amount of money for something that's not going to be worth it at the end of the day.
That was basically how the Impressionists started out. They had their own sort of, it was a combination of art school and a salon, but you wouldn't actually learn anything from there because there was no formal teaching apparatus, but rather they would go there and they would, it was kind of like a dick measuring contest. You sort of go there and you draw each other and you sort of share each other's work, but it was never this like formalized structure that you see nowadays. As opposed to like, I don't know, academia is a bit different because you still have quite a bit of a formalized structure that's almost, I would say in some ways kind of necessary, because in order to teach something, or rather to learn something hyper specific, you almost have to go to like wherever it is that they're offering. Like if you wanted to learn about Heidegger, in North America, at least, you're pretty much fucking out of luck, right? So yeah, the art world is a bit different. Of course, there is like the what would you say, art world, well, university to art world pipeline, but I don't know if that's true or not, like if that's a real thing anymore. I think there's a lot of artists who are sort of, their own thing.
Well, where are most of the artists coming from today, the ones that are internationally recognized? Like, it's still, I think, a matter of having the right connections to people in that world. And I don't know, like the
absolutely, like no connections, like you get nothing. Basically, like what I do is like I deal with artists, mostly musicians, but I've also worked in art shows, and it's always word of mouth. Who is your connection? Like connections are everything right now. So regardless if you went through academia or not, if you weren't, wise when you had to mingle, then it's going to be really hard for you unless you manage to get an agent.
Well, that's why with the internet, there are all kinds of art communities that are on their own, and they're not really associated with the greater art world. I think Gio is someone who I would love to bring into the art world as a whole, because God knows he deserves it. Gio, you are incredibly talented.
Matthew also
and you should.
deserves it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, Matthew.
We got to define really what the art world, because when you talk about
making
a
lot of money, that's what I define as the art world.
Exactly. That's exactly. You're talking about what they call the contemporary art world. What DC Miller would call the contemporary art world today, which basically is, it's big money, it's big connections, it's big patronage. But I mean, I don't think necessarily this really has any bearing on the quality of the work or even the cultural relevance of the work. A lot of these people are kind of pushed as being at the bleeding edge of, this is the edgiest new thing around, or this is some stunning new thing. But I don't think a lot of it's going to be remembered in even 5 or 10 years, really.
Well, it reminds me of what Robert Hughes said, where it was at the end of, I think it was almost the very last episode of Shock of the New, where he said, he said this big screed where he says, maybe we won't have to see someone sticking needles in themselves from the latest University of Paranoiac and think it's relevant to our time and it's gripping because nobody understands it and nobody cares. Meaning, like, art, his point was that art will always find a way to slip from conjecture into meaning, and the way it does that will basically do it on its own without any sort of institution there to hobble it. That art,
that's right.
In a romantic way, art will find its own purpose and it will find its own sort of message without people consciously trying to muff it up or trying to make a buck out of it.
So that would further, in my opinion, that would further validate what Lev's saying about going at it sort of outside of the traditional structures of an academy or a university or what have you, because if you are truly talented at the form and you're truly in a vein, then it's going to express itself regardless of those ridiculously bloated and overpriced structures that we all know have huge problems currently.
Did someone say bloated?
That's great.
Did someone say bloated?
Bloated with Maker's Mark. Well, I think Hermes, that's a wonderful, really,
That's a little
really
Maker's
wonderful
Mark
way
bottle,
of
by
putting
the way.
it. I think that's a very eloquent way of putting it, Hermes, honestly. Like, I like to think of it as I know maybe it sounds a bit cheesy, but there is a story of art. There is like a continuum, and you as an artist, you simply dip your toes into this, and then it kind of moves through you. I don't think, a lot of people, they try so hard to be relevant, to be, to create something like Geotode is shockingly new, but I don't think a lot of these people really do engage with the story of art and the whole, all of the great artists of the past kind of in dialogue and dialectic with one another. And I think great art that does engage with that is always going to be able to speak and have lasting relevance,
What kind of art do you think is making dialogue with the art that came before right now?
Frank Hassel. Sorry, it's relevant. I'm sorry.
No, I hope a small follower comes in here today. I hope John can make an appearance. I send him a Zoom link, because that is, in a way, a continuation of someone like G.G. Allen, the kind of hassling that Frank Hassel does. And I saw his latest video, Dr. Don Wario. I fucking love that name so much. And I almost want to, like, Gio, you can do this if you want to. There's just like an idea for you. The elderly tanned man with that white mask that Dr. Don Wario was hassling in the beginning. He was talking about...
We can do that.
Yes, he was talking about giving him, like, the bimbification gas and that he's wearing women's clothing. I would love for you to actually to draw that elderly Mexican. And I don't know if he's Mexican. I don't know who he is, Mexican or Italian. I don't know. But just this elderly, crusty-looking old guy with the mask, wearing women's clothing, wearing a wig, and then Dr. Don Wario standing somewhere, beside him, with a tear coming down his eye, that he's finally happy that this man has accepted who he really is, that he has become a bambified, sissified,
bimbified, sissified gimp slave.
Exactly. And how everybody's just applauding, like at the end of A Clockwork Orange. They're just so happy that he finally went through with it.
Well, it's funny.
He was cured, all right.
It's funny because I recently have done a bit of tweeting in this regard. I left a pretty lengthy comment on who's that guy? What's his name? Meme Analysis, who I think we should also get on this show. Basically about Frank Hassel really is, in a lot of ways, where sort of the prank channel is left off. They were sort of fake and they were nonsensical and they really didn't have an intellect behind them. Frank Hassel really is on the level of someone like an Abramovic or a Chris Burden or someone like that, who's actually willing to go out there and put himself in incredible bodily harm in order to fulfill, I truly think, a deeper purpose of not just shocking people, but also shocking people out of their complacency, you could say.
Yeah, that's interesting you talk about Abramovich there, because Abramovich, one of her intentions with her art, it was at the beginning she wanted to put herself through like extremes of bodily states, extremes of conscious states. So I think Frank Hassel definitely, there's an element of that to his work as well. I'm not going to say that it's comparable to Abramovich, but there's definitely a desire to kind of seek out the extreme and kind of like plunge yourself into these it's more mind games, I think, with Hassel, because he understands how to really niggle at people without even necessarily knowing them on a personal level. He gets right under people's skin.
Maximum psychic violence inflicted in the shortest amount of time.
Psychic violence, exactly right.
I just wonder if you were to paint this gentleman over here with the mask on, would you like draw lipstick on the mask, or like how would you convey the sissification of somebody who has this mask on, because we can't really see his face?
Probably red lips is always the go-to sign of femininity. I think that's why
massive jugs. You know, he's got to give him the bimbo
jugs.
jugs.
There you
yeah.
go.
Yes.
I think, well, it's like, I wanted to ask this
Big fan.
because of the ladies in the chat. Some of them I've been following for years. I wonder, because one of Matthew's favorite artists is, a few of them would be from the aesthetic period, one of them being Burne Jones, the other being William Waterhouse. You notice how they always have that very not just feminine face, but also like the glowing red crimson lips that is sort of came from a lot of newer pigments available to them, like cadmiums. But I wonder why that nowadays that's sort of what would you say, a blatant rebellious femininity is almost shunned and almost actively being destroyed in the contemporary art world. I wonder, like, what that sort of the psychic damage that is being done to women now that they don't have uplifting aesthetic art to look at, besides like the Kathleen Hanna Riot Girl lesbians with acoustic guitar stuff. I wonder. What mean?
You can see their brain rot like very, very clearly from that kind of stuff. The younger the girl is, the worse it is.
the Tumblr
Yes,
generation.
but it's because beauty has become a battleground. What we mean by beauty, because is it the classical beauty, which is objective, which is form, derived from form, or is it this completely subjective construct that, as we're seeing, and the inversion of values, basically? This is something that you see over and over again. What is traditionally good and desirable is suddenly, not wanted. It's like, how long have we been seeing, like, it's the past 10 years, it's been like the uglification of culture in every way. It's like you no longer have supermodels like we did in the 90s. You no longer have a Claudia Schiffer. You have it's like the latest Nike model that everybody's seeing online. Basically, it's a meme. It's like, who can think that is beautiful? Nobody.
You have Lizzo.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
just-
We have Lizzo now.
Yeah.
Lev, just quickly, I see you've posted the Burne Jones picture there. That's a very interesting one. I don't know if you've seen the one he did, the Golden Stairs, where you've got all these ladies walking down a spiral staircase and they're all playing musical instruments. I just wanted to mention that, the Golden Stairs by Burne Jones. But I just wanted to mention that the reason why these women, the faces of these women are kind of the typical later pre-Raphaelite idealized kind of woman. But if you look closely at their faces, they're actually based on real women. And the women in the Golden Stairs painting he did, they're based around a lot of his wife's friends, his cousins and things. And they all have a very idealized kind of look to them. And that was kind of a Victorian ideal of beauty. But nowadays, obviously, you can't really see too well if it's not zoomed in. But that is one of my favorite paintings, that painting. And it's so big and grand when you see it in real life. It's about 3 meters tall.
Wow.
But I think a lot of people might accuse him of kind of having same face, like you say about the Tumblr aesthetic. Well, a lot of these women, they do have very kind of similarly idealized faces. But if you look up close, they do have their own individual portraits of individual women.
So here's an example over here.
Beautiful. Yeah.
I know this does speak to a lot of women nowadays, just the simple, elegant way he's portrayed these women, almost kind of angelic. And they're all kind of, engaging in the ideal platonic form of this art of music. And they're all, there's very much kind of I don't know what you call it, platonic idealism to the whole of Burne Jones, the way he presents the scenes and the geometry even of the staircase that they're walking down, and
Well, it's an interesting thing for me to consider the difference, and I'm curious what you guys think of this between the art of the Middle Ages, where everything was a lot more iconic. It was supposed to represent this kind of a much holier state of being, but at least I found that in some of those icons, it looks like the saints are judging you. Like Mary with baby Jesus, she's looking down at the people with this, what looks to me like a very judgmental face. But then as we start going into the Renaissance, there's number one, humanism mixed together with a lot of paganism that's being revived at this time. So I wonder what does this tell you, this transition that happened?
Renaissance picks up the canon from the Greeks, basically. This is
but
what
even
happens.
the Greeks, what's interesting is that the Greeks, the archaic Greeks, they had much more of a and maybe a little bit later on too, but they had this, I don't remember what it's called, but they portrayed their gods as also being very neutral faced, almost like they're beyond any of these petty squabbles of the people. But then later on you get to much more emotive expressions.
Well, even you have to be careful, I think, with the conception of medieval art in the Renaissance as being a revival of the Greeks and the Romans, because unfortunately, a lot of sort of very slippery scholarship that came out. For example, Vasari basically writing off the Germanics. Not that I'm complaining, being an Italian myself, but a lot of it still had this sort of peak religiosity and excitement of religious fervor that was really, a lot of the sort of humanism is almost greatly overstated by a lot of Enlightenment scholars. For example, you had Botticelli that was taken in by the head inquisitor and he started doing religious paintings. You had Frangelico, for instance, that was doing very interesting, almost very subtle and sweet paintings, unlike what I'm doing now, which is very purposefully destructive. But you do have still within the Renaissance and that sort of holding of a lot of medieval values that were present. And a lot of that, like it's almost like, the kind of fall of the Roman Empire, the way that Gibbons portrayed Christianity as being at the forefront of destroying Rome, when in actuality there was it was certainly one of the factors, but it wasn't the main one. But nowadays, I figure that it's
But
even more distorted, right?
Christianity,
Yeah,
I
go
suppose, enabled the transition. And, you destroy something is not necessarily a negative thing. You transform it and you transmute it into a new and more interesting form. You've got the Middle Ages. But I was just going to say, Lev, about Botticelli. It's interesting you put Botticelli there next to Burne-Jones, because Burne-Jones worshipped Botticelli, and he basically the face of Venus you see there was really one of his main models and influences for the way he would choose to portray the faces of his women in his paintings as well. And you can really see, the whole idea of PreAthletism was, and the aesthetic movement in the 19th century was really trying to get back to that kind of pureness of the way medieval things were depicted, or what they idealized, the way, obviously it's not going to be a complete recreation.
There's Jules. So, hey, Jules, how are you? Speaking of beauty, unfortunately, Jules is wearing the mask, so we can't appreciate the full thing. But there is an article that Jules put up here, "The Return of Jules" by Thomas Cinnamon. That's an interesting name, Cinnamon. It reminds me of that Apple Jacks commercial. You remember where they had Cinnamon? Here I come, I'm Cinnamon. Anyway.
I remember that, yeah.
It's dating yourself right there, though.
Yeah, yes it is. No, everybody knows I'm a boomer. Anyway, yes, but
I remember that too. Though.
Yes. So here Botticelli was obviously doing Venus, but at the same time he was doing religious paintings as well. So it is a very interesting fusion of, I don't know, was it a matter of a lot of these very well-off cardinals and members of the papacy seeing all this talent and kind of utilizing it for their own purposes, or was it a matter of I don't know, how did the whole thing come about?
Well, it was a lot of sinners that had to pay indulgences that, especially of the sexual variety, that commissioned a lot of Renaissance art for the church.
But seriously, in terms of the Baroque period, with things like Bernini, and Michelangelo's David and all that. Well, I suppose that's mid-Renaissance, but especially with the Baroque period, it was a lot about Christianity kind of flexing on the Protestants, on Lutheranism. They were basically trying to say, well, look, you're going to have your secession from us, but we're going to show you how powerful the Catholic Church really is by commissioning all these wonderful statues in St. Peter's Basilica and all this stuff.
You've got your theses, we've got our art.
Yeah, that's right. It was just a big flex, really, but a good one, I suppose.
Yeah, against the nerd shit.
Well,
but I wonder if that sort of same feeling of religious fervor could be transmitted through art again. Certainly, it's here and there, although in very strange places and very postmodern fragmented places.
Well, yeah,
Abramovic is one example, but
I mean, I don't think you're ever going to see an art powered by the raw power of the Catholic Church at the height of the Baroque period. I don't think you're ever going to see that again. And I'm sorry to let down the people who want to return to whatever, but there's the Catholic Church. What art? The Catholic Church, obviously.
We have Princess TNT.
Well, this is what we get out of the Catholic Church now. This is what we're getting out of the Catholic Church now. What's going on here?
She was funding Bannon, though.
What is with the snake? I mean, can somebody explain?
I don't know anything about this. I have seen this, but I don't know anything about this.
So this is in St. Peter's Square. If I'm.
What did they mean by this?
Yeah. So this is the Pope's.
Terrifying. That's
is the
Pope's Indian serpent goddess.
I mean, look, I have a lot of respect for a lot of these Indian gods, and they look way more attractive than whatever this thing is. Because if we're talking about, like, serpents, the serpent is Kundalini. It's the primal energy that animates the universe. It could be used for both good and ill. But when it comes to this snake, like, it's intentionally eerie looking, and the lighting as well. It's like, it looks sick. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I was gonna say it looks really unhealthy, like blue light.
Just quickly, I mean, do you know the intention of the architect? Is this an intentional design, or is it because I know people love to read a lot of things, Illuminati into things these days, and that's wonderful and fun to do. But I'm
it was
more
all the
interested in
OSS. All of modern art created by the OSS. Yeah. You heard it here, folks.
I mean, this is.
I'm not subtweeting anybody. I am not.
I'd like to know what the architects of these things actually their real thought process were. I mean, I know people would say, well, you don't have to. Look into this to know that it's some kind of evil, inversion or subversion of.
Ominous.
So it's
certainly interesting that looks like a snake. I mean, but I don't really know anything about this building. That's the thing. All I know is it gets posted as kind of an example of the Catholic Church doing evil things or having.
Well, it's like that statue that they have. That was.
Oh, the weird. Yeah. Are you talking about
the Apocalypse Christ?
Yeah, and it looks almost like a Warhammer Necron god or something.
He was actually a pretty prolific modern sculptor, along with I forget his name, but he was in the same school as what's his name, Giacometti and
Lev, can you possibly bring
and people like that?
Can you bring that up, Lev? Do you know what we're talking about?
Are you talking about this sculpture right over here?
Yeah, that's the one. That's it. Now, this to me, it reminds me a bit of Rodin, when he did some of Rodin's sort of Gates of Hell type things, or when he does these sort of figures that are kind of enmeshed in stone. It almost looks like it's liquid and moving, and they're kind of trapped in half finished, half raw and half unformed. But
the sketch for this one
just looks scary, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The sketch for that one was actually made in liquid polystyrene. It actually ended up he switched to another material because it actually ended up giving him a fucking blood clot when it hit him in the leg. So yeah.
This is the architect of the Snake Hall, Pier Luigi Nervi. Bella. Okay, so he was he studied at the University of Bologna, graduating
Bologna.
I know. Graduating.
There's a bunch of baloney.
Luigi Bologna.
Graduating in 1913.
There's the dad jokes up in here.
Graduating from the University of Gabagool.
God damn it! I was about to talk about the Gabagool. I did a whole I retweeted a whole video from The Sopranos where it was a compilation of them talking about
Just them
gabagool.
saying gabagool.
Yes. So Nervi taught as a professor of engineering at Rome University from 1946 to 61 and is known worldwide as a structural engineer and architect for his innovative use of reinforced concrete. So there we go. I mean, he's really big on the reinforced concrete. I'm not really sure
Brutalism.
what else. Yes.
And also, he was a Luciferian, and he did this to
do we
deceive
know?
everybody.
Do we know if Nervi was influenced by Primavera Due, Licio Gelli, or any of those?
I think that rings a bell. He was influenced by someone. Yeah, there was something kind of strange going on with him. Like, for example, a lot of contemporary art, well, at least in the 70s and in the 60s, a lot of it was originally inspired by Rosicrucians and Theosophists. So, and especially in Europe, right?
Well, you know, there's a link to Perón. Pitu was really big in Argentina. Perón was really into Licio Gelli. He was like a constant guest here. And it says that they were the culprits of stealing the hands of Perón. I don't know if you've heard of this story, but like the hands were cut off from his grave and stolen. Nobody knows why or how. Maybe to make a hand of glory. Who knows?
Man, I don't know. Okay, so Jules is saying, Lev, your sound is glitching a lot. So apparently I'm not the only one. So I want to ask you guys about the other guy, the statue guy, and let me fiddle around with the sound and see what exactly is going on here. So the other statue of the Pope, the one with the demons, who's the person who was responsible for that?
One with the demons. I don't know. So I don't know if it's meant to be demons as well. People
it's meant to be an apocalyptic Christ rising.
It's an apocalyptic Christ. So this is kind of what, like a Book of Revelations thing.
Yeah, doesn't it remind of those drawings by William Blake?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Of Heaven
that's right.
and Hell.
The thing for me about the comparison, which I think is apt, is that with Blake, I get a sense that there's still like a holy reverence there for the material. Absolutely. And that like Blake is approaching it from there's no irony in Blake's work. I feel that's just my interpretation. Whereas
I'm sorry, Herbert, I would when you say reverence, I mean Blake himself, he had a very unique and strange cosmology. Wasn't it inspired by sort of Swedenborgianism?
Yes.
So he would definitely be considered to be very unorthodox in terms of his actual religious beliefs. But I know you're right in the sense that there is a reverence for what his own cosmology, and he was very much respectful of that. But he really played very fast and loose with what you'd call traditional Christian theology.
I fully agree with everything you said. Yeah, and yes, he's not orthodox.
Heretical.
but his what I'm getting at is that when I see his work, I don't doubt his belief, like capital B belief. In his own cosmologies and you know his kind of syncretic appropriation of Christian iconography.
There's an ingenuity to his approach, though.
Yes,
like he truly believes it.
Whereas with this Apocalypse Christ, I look at it, and yes, obviously there's talent that goes into the creation of this thing, but when I look at it, what I feel is just plain disgust. And that's simply me, and that's just my intuitive reaction to it. And there's just almost no comparison between.
I find it hard to argue with that, honestly, Hamish.
I find it amazing. What are you talking about?
I think it's maybe meant to invoke, if it was perhaps in a different setting as well. I think it's as well the context that it's placed in.
Right.
It's meant to invoke a sense of awe and terror, which is God is often invoked in the apocalyptic sense as having this coming in this
existential terror.
Or you're just blown away by the presence of Christ at the end of time or whatever. But in this sense, you've put this in this modernist building, and then you've got these old men who represent kind of a power structure that a lot of people find unsettling these days, I suppose. And in that context, it recontextualizes itself.
Are these guys
into
supposed
maybe
to,
something that would?
Are these guys supposed to strike terror into the hearts of people who observe them? The Swiss Guard wearing these ridiculous-looking costumes. I still don't understand what's going on here. I mean, it looks really weird, and it looks especially out of place if you're looking over here at these guards. You know, they look like
Well,
fine.
that's why it looks out of place there. I think is because you have these traditional, the Swiss Guard uniform. I presume that's influenced by what Renaissance or 17th century garb that's gone back for ages. And then you put that in this modernist building with this hyper modernist sculpture, and you've got a very weird juxtaposition of things, which I think maybe they think represents something that we don't necessarily think the same.
No, definitely. And Jugs, what is your feeling when it comes to a lot of this modern architecture that's invading a lot of these very traditional spaces? Like there are some, I mean, Paul Joseph Watson loves to make these videos criticizing the mainstream media. I mean, Paul Joseph Watson in England, like, is he... Like, do you see him sometimes? Is he around?
He lives in London. No, if I saw him, I'd Frank Hassel him. I'm just joking.
That would be amazing.
I imagine he probably lives in a very swanky apartment somewhere in London, and I don't know. He probably lives quite a charmed life, honestly, considering how rich he is. But he has some of the worst taste in art and in architecture of anyone I've ever seen. Frankly, especially with the platform.
What's funny?
It's embarrassing.
You know what's funny? Like, I always riff on Paul Joseph Watson. I always make fun of him and riff on him. But at the same time, as cringy and embarrassing he is when he talks about art, there's this one YouTuber who apparently is a writer for, what's that atrocious Gamergate publication?
Kotaku.
Kotaku. Jacob Geller, that's his name. Jacob Geller!
Rest in peace, Kotaku. They shut down Kotaku.
Yeah. So Jacob Geller, apparently he has this. I watched this video where he's, calling Paul Joseph Watson a fascist. And if you, here's the thing: me being a modern art respecter, at the same time, the people that are critical of people who want to return to some sort of standard of beauty and aesthetic expression, they're equally, if not more, cringy than Paul Joseph Watson, because it's the same old tired Susan Sontag thesis of, like, if you admire aesthetic beauty, then you must be a fascist. I mean, it is true in some controversial take, but it's true on some level that if you are an admirer of traditional art, then you may have quote unquote fascistic tendencies, but at the same time, it's like, look at these people. Look at the hideous bugman aesthetic.
Thank you. Bring it to me. Beauty is reactionary. That's wonderful.
Susan's actually Susan's pretty hot.
I
don't know what
your
she's
terms
talking
are
about.
acceptable.
I think
she was pretty hot. Yeah, she was pretty hot.
Sorry, can we just dismantle once and for all this whole idea that there's this idea of beauty that's sort of inherently fascist? Because beauty is nothing to do with the fascist ideal of beauty at all. Because real beauty has ugliness in it and horror and terror and even evokes revulsion and disgust. Whereas the art that fascists strove to make, they really kind of stripped all of that out. That they gutted all of the the kind of indescribable elements of beauty which make truly beautiful art. Like Egon Schiele, for example. Egon Schiele's art is beautiful, and
because it's intimate, because it's the intimacy of Schiele that really.
There's also because there's a film there's a grimy film to it, and beauty has that as well, especially when you're talking about human beauty and beauty in human relationships and the way we are essentially fallen creatures. You can't just present necessarily a wholly idealized, like in the way that the Nazis tried to do. This just doesn't hold up, unfortunately. This doesn't, this to me, like what they're supposed to do, it's so much more evocative of real human ideals of beauty than any of even though Arno Brecker is a very talented artist, like any of his work, and that's
even anyone who's saying that beauty is inherently fascist is most likely not going to give you a reliable definition of what fascism is.
No, they'll give you the old-fashioned Umberto Eco, won't they?
Yeah, that it's pure fascism.
The time.
No idea what they're talking about.
But then there's this thing that we covered.
That's peak aesthetics, though. You do have to admit that fascism was very aesthetic.
Well, Italian fascism, at least.
Italian fascism, yeah, it's very camp, very aesthetic.
Everything we touch, we make it aesthetic.
Yes, of course.
I think what separated them is the Italians were willing to embrace very slick modernism, whereas the Nazis, for example, I always forget this. I wanted to write something about it, but Matthew, enlighten me. What is that one painting of the German family the Nazi artist did.
Oh, I couldn't tell you who did that, but yeah, I know exactly the one you mean. I mean,
Where
there
it's
was
the
only
kid-
maybe 2 or 3, well, 10 maybe at most, sort of state-sanctioned painters who actually
Yeah.
painted these idealized scenes of. But
There
yeah,
was more filmmakers, believe it or not.
Yeah, well-
But there was this one painting where it was like the little boy was staring into you,
This
and
one?
it was like,
There we
yeah,
go.
that one,
There-
that
there
one,
it is, there.
yeah.
He knew.
And you
he
could
knew
see
one.
the expression of Thanatos in his eyes. It's like this cold, dead, almost pantomime of what traditional family life is, which I think in some ways I would agree with the modern art critics of the Nazis, especially right in the 50s and 60s, like Helen Greenberg. There's something very eerie and disturbing about that style. But I wonder, though, because
It's because
when
it's a very modernist style, but they're trying to take out of modernism all of the bits which make it subversive and forward-looking, and they're trying to turn it back on itself, and it doesn't really work very well. I think there are some pieces of Nazi art which I think are really good. I think some of Arno Brecker's sculptures are really stunning. But you're right, the painting never really got particularly far, in my opinion, because maybe it was, I don't know, it was too based on,
because the Jews were painting at the time.
It's kitschy.
Yeah, it's
Well,
kitschy.
yeah.
That's
the
ultimately
Jews were
it.
doing way more interesting stuff than any of these guys, honestly.
But see, the thing is, it's funny because I know I'm going to get a lot of heat from a certain demographic that probably watches the show. But in some ways, you could say that a lot of the quote unquote degenerate art really shouldn't have been classified as such because, for example, German Expressionism compared to Dada. Now, Dada, pretty much a lot of it was quote unquote degenerate. But German Expressionism had this like very subtle undercurrent of reactionary thinking into it, and at least in a reactionary sentiment against modernity. I mean, Otto Dix, Kirchner, you name it. Like a lot of them, they painted Huas, for instance. They painted Ladies of the Night in this very haunting, like the like what we're seeing in contemporary art nowadays, the feminine. The consuming mother, the consuming feminine is coming back with the vengeance to devour the souls of men everywhere. And that
there we
one,
go. That's the
that
consuming
one.
feminine right there. How often do
And
you see
I
an
think-
expression like this in social media today? I think pretty often.
No, exactly. And me and Lady Astor and me and Jugs, we talk about this, about how this sort of very warped version of modern femininity in a lot of ways is bleeding into contemporary art, and it's becoming something quite monstrous, but there's like a celebration of the monstrous because it's like feminism has abandoned any hope of being unique and original. Now it's like you have to be this like caricature of a man in some ways. It's really strange. I don't know what's going on there. What
Yeah, King Kong King Kong eats beauty here.
yeah, Lizzo eating beauty.
Yes, well, we'll have people in the art world today even attempted to draw some kind of a portrait of those like the drag queen story hour drag queens as like these demonic entities that are just like.
Well, there's some. I mean, there's a lot of the Chinese art world, believe it or not, is doing quite good things.
Well,
Like,
I'm sorry, I'm
like Ali
spreading
Jai,
by
for
in here,
instance.
but
Oh, go ahead,
I think
Matt,
it's
go ahead.
awfully simplistic. I think it's awfully simplistic to just kind of break down and say, "Oh, these people are demons, and we're going to paint them as demons." Obviously, they're fully aware of how they look to the outside, and I think any art that deals with things like this, so-called societal decay or degeneration, has to deal with it in a way which
it's performative, like just dressing up as demons. They know that, and they do it.
Yeah, absolutely. But you can't just throw that back at them, is what I'm saying, in order to highlight the fact that they're demons and they're evil. They're aware of how they look and everything.
Throwing it back wouldn't be enough. I agree, but the interaction with them and these puppets of people who are sitting down watching them with like their NPC expressions, I think playing around with that would be much more.
I suppose the juxtaposition is very interesting with that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I could handle it sensitively enough or interestingly enough. I think you're very, very easily going to run into things that just end up kind of cheesy or kind of, I don't know, they're just kind of they're just gross. I don't know. Like when you do,
Well,
when
I
you
call
talk
it
about
vulgar
German
tradism
expressionism,
in a lot of ways.
yeah, vulgar tradism. That's right.
Where it's like you're just sort of
it's
doing
like a
the.
stone. You don't want to make like a Stone Toss comic kind of equivalent.
Yes.
Of, painting stuff. He already does that. Because he already does that.
But here's the
Propaganda.
thing: me and Painted Worlds, we were talking about this. How nobody TM sort of did this with a subtlety, but nowadays the people that took the original sort of editing style of Nobody TM, they ran with it and they made like modern world cringe comps, if you remember those. It's sort of like this very vulgar statement.
Well, Paul Joseph
like,
Watson bloody does that. That Paul Joseph Watson, he
obviously
he never invented that format, but he hijacked that format to get millions and millions of views. And that's just so redundant nowadays. I mean, there are whole accounts, there are whole people as brands just
that do this sort of doom posting,
just purely just saying, look at this shit. Well,
Yes.
who fucking cares, bro? Who gives a damn? It's just so redundant.
All the people,
But, I mean,
who already
We're
agree with
insulting
him.
look at
quite a
just
bit
German
of our
expressionism.
followers right now, Matthew.
No, I'm just insulting people who are obsessed with just black pill porn or whatever they want to call it.
No, that's exactly what it is. People
Make
like this.
something.
People
if you
like
don't
to be
like this
reassured that they're
ugliness,
right. People like to be
you need
reassured
to make
that they're
something
right.
better. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the hard thing, isn't it? Like, it's much easier to
It's
sit
because
down and watch this.
People
doom
love
porn.
to feel disempowered. They love to feel helpless in the sort of this eye of this maelstrom and think, oh, modernity is just eating me and chewing me out. They love it. They like getting vored by modernity. These people, they have a vor fetish.
Yeah, they're all yes.
They're getting bored by modernity.
It's a fetishistic. It's a masochistic, fetishistic desire. There's nothing, and then they'll quote Evola, like "ride the tiger, bro." But you're not riding the tiger. You're enjoying being mashed up by the tiger's mouth, basically.
So maybe it makes more sense. Like
you're being sissified by the tiger.
Yes. I mean, maybe.
Like, what do you think I'm doing? I know what I'm doing is disgusting and awful right here.
You have to have joy.
No, it's high art. It's beautiful. I love it. I want to buy it. I might just do it.
Yes,
what's going on with his face?
You have
by
to
the
look
way,
at my fucking face while I Fuck.
what is what is going on with his face? Like, his face is blue. Is it because it's bloated? Like,
no, I haven't. I like to do the face last. I like.
That's
to
the
body
underlayer.
Okay, because sometimes like the beached, like when you're a beached whale person, when you're dead, sometimes the skin just starts.
He choked on his own
whale person.
He choked on his own vomit like Jimi Hendrix.
Well, Ethan Ralph, he really is. Maybe not the Jimi Hendrix, but certainly. No, I wouldn't go that far. Yeah, certainly is. Well, I don't know. Led Zeppelin stole a lot of stuff, so maybe he might be the Led Zeppelin of streaming.
Thank you. No one ever talks about that.
John Bonham.
About how Led Zeppelin's, they stole quite a bit.
Just like just like a
I honestly
band,
let Led Zeppelin get away with so much because they're such a sick band on stage. So I know Jimmy Page. He stole the melody from all sorts of things. But
I don't know how many times I watched The Song Remains the Same. Like for years, I would just come from working at clubs and just watch it, like in the morning after party. Yeah. That's it.
They're next level band, Led Zeppelin, honestly, and that sort of band that only gets better the older you get. Honestly, the more you understand musicianship and like just how much energy these guys put out, even if it was demonic Crowley energy, you got to get the
no, but the problem is the live
experience
wasn't as good. They weren't as like on par live. Like they were fucked up half the time, so they would stumble on stage and miss things. I think really what's his name, the bassist, what's his name,
John Paul Jones.
John Paul Jones.
Yeah. He was the only one that was really like the non-smackhead of the band. He held it down.
Well, John Bonham was probably pissed like literally every single gig he did, but he's still the best drummer, one of the best drummers of the 70s ever.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, no doubt. But the thing is, I think that Ginger Baker
overshadowed
him in that regard. But that's just my personal opinion.
Well, see,
by the way, how am I doing, guys? How's it coming along?
It's looking fantastic, actually. It's looking really, particularly like the I like the shadow cast there by his protruding sort of
Pig
foot.
hoof?
I like it. Yeah, his protruding little pig hoof.
Yeah, his little like he skipped leg day. Look at his legs.
And you've really managed to
I don't
capture
think the only time
sketch
Ethan Ralph
energy.
ever had leg day was when he was forced to in federal prison to have leg day with the white car. So that's the only time
He got his 1 hour in the exercise yard every day.
You know, speaking of exercise, if there was a little mouse on the beach with a little motorcycle, like a little Evil Knievel kind of mouse, that mouse could just go on the leg. I mean, you kind of stopped it right now, Gio, by adding that extra breaststroke. But I was just gonna say, like, that mouse could just ride on his leg and just like slope up and just do a stunt. You know, it is really meant for that kind of Evil Knievel type stunts. This kind of leg, it's a very good leg for that. But anyway. It is a very brilliant artwork that you're doing, and once again, for anybody who wants to purchase it, go to the bottom of the screen, cryptocurrency checkout, or you can go to streamlabs.com/lovejules. What is the lowest price?
$112.
$112. You heard it here. $112. That's the lowest price, and this is going to be an auction. So if anybody wants to step in and take this artwork, you can. And
if not, Jugs will buy it. So
yes.
Don't worry about it.
By the way, in the auction,
True.
in case we get
no pressure.
In case we get 112, then 113, then 114, and then 150, what would the runners-up get? They would probably get like a print, right, or like something. Because
they would get probably a print from the That Feel When No GF series, like the $20 patrons that we have.
Exactly. And for those who are not aware, if you go to patreon.com/breaktherules, $20 patron, get one of these beautiful prints from the main man, Gio himself. So anyway, I wanted
Gio, sorry. I liked it better without that shadow on his hand. I
exaggerated it, so I'll get rid of it.
Yeah,
I thought it was just going to.
I think it was perfect without the shadow on the hand. Anyway, sorry.
I wanted to ask Lady Aster about your view of aesthetics and beauty. Because, so we are most likely going to have somebody who is a friend of mine from an international agency coming in for for patrons only on our BTR After Hours for Friday. And I don't know if it's for Friday or if it's going to be for another day. It'll basically have to be a day when I can get most of the patrons together so they can tune in, but that's going to be a private conversation. And when it comes to a lot of these agencies that, let's say, have more of a globalistic view of the world, how would you describe the battle that's going on right now between that kind of view of the world and what it's doing to people versus the artwork that's kind of, if not fighting against it, the artwork that's being recovered by people who actually care about it on the internet? And again, not to go as cringy as Paul Joseph Watson, talking about, everything new being bad and everything old being good or whatever, but, like, where do you stand on it, Lady Aster?
Well, there's a lot of good now. We've had enough of deconstruction of art, so we're seeing a return to traditional art. Like ateliers are returning in New York, in Paris, and London. It's not something that is just a fantasy of return, but it's actually happening. So I'm very encouraged about that. People are seeking their own way, trying to learn from the masters. And
what is atelier? Sorry to interrupt you. What is that?
What?
You said something. Ateliers, you said, is returning. What is
atelier?
That? Atelier.
Ateliers.
Yes.
Ateliers.
What is ateliers?
Atelier. Yes, they're returning. Like recently.
Means a workshop. Means a workshop, though.
Yes. It's a workshop for artists in which an apprentice can learn from a master doing the chops like it used to be. Like when you think about all the Renaissance masters like Michelangelo, all those guys, they started
but
that
nowadays, nowadays, I suppose atelier means more of a 19th century academic structured way of teaching art, basically.
Yes. Yes.
With obviously that comes from the Renaissance and from the master apprentice dynamic, but you don't necessarily get apprentice to one-on-one to people, but it is a lot more direct, I think, way of teaching in ateliers where you have, everyone does the same exercises. They draw from the same plaster casts at first, then you draw from live models, and then you move to painting in grisaille and grey, and then you paint in colour. So everybody kind of moves at the same level, and that you're expected to reach a certain standard in each part until you move on to the next part. Sorry.
Is that a system that is separate from the academic course as we discussed earlier, however?
Like art school? Yeah, totally separate.
Well, that's definitely separate from the way art school is taught in, say, the University of the Arts London. That's completely separate from that. Yeah, I mean, they strive in atelier system to pretty much emulate the 19th century. Way of teaching. But obviously, there is within the ateliers, like for example, the Florence Academy of Art, they would teach a slightly different way, but it's a lot more based on observation and less on kind of less on anatomy and things. People can add in different, like Jeffrey Watts, for example. Jeffrey Watts is a famous American atelier owner. He's influenced by Nikolai Fechin a lot, who's a sort of Russian
I've read about
academic.
him recently.
Yeah,
yes.
Jeffrey Watts is probably one of the best known.
He would turn down working for Disney to actually teach people in like a direct way. He was going to work for Disney, but then he's like, fuck that, I'm not gonna like waste my most productive years on making stills for derivative animations. So
and he teaches people in a very structured way, which so many people are just not used to in art, and he gets results, But the thing with ateliers, I think, if you learn from an atelier, you're going to not necessarily have a lot of your own personality allowed to be injected into that work. And often people, after they finish the atelier course, they do have to find their own vision, and they have to find their own, and that's where your own influence is coming. Whereas in somewhere like Chelsea University Arts London, all you've got is really your own. You're expected to kind of ride off the back of your own personality. Yeah.
That's all they push for. But there's something in form, it's like everybody knows Picasso as this like super modernist or like author, but like he mastered the classics. Like he actually said that in order to be able to deconstruct art, you first had to do it in the proper way, the way he was taught, So I think that that's something that like some people now think that like just like draw two sticks together and that's impressionistic art. And it's not, that's just ridiculous. It's like complete disregard for form. And
the problem with it. Oh yeah, sorry.
No,
go ahead.
No, dear, talk.
No. I was just going to say really quickly that the problem I think with ateliers is that you're basically they produce a lot of sameness. Unfortunately, like for example, if you're spending the money to be blessed to go to an Odd Nerdum atelier that's being taught by him, you're going to end up painting like Odd Nerdum, like that. There's no way around it, right? So. Yeah.
Well, he's quite singular, I suppose. I don't know if you want to bring up, Lev, any Odd Nerdrum painting.
How do you spell his name?
Know him at all?
Oh, here we go. I found it. Odd Nerdrum.
Norwegian artist. ODD.
Norwegian artist.
Nerdrum, yeah. So
here's one.
He is Norwegian artist. Well, he's basically hugely influenced by Rembrandt, and his work is basically kind of what he calls his work kitsch. Basically, he coined the term kitsch, in the sense that his work. I think, how would you describe his Geo? Like kitsch, as he describes it, it's kind of willfully embracing
realism and traditional painting methods. Although I would say Odd Nerdum is different because his methods are more, they're not exactly sort of LARPing Rembrandt, but they're pretty close because for example, he says he takes off more with his palette knife than puts on. He deals with like what I'm doing right now, very thick paint that he scrapes off and he molds, and it's really a tactile process for Odd Nerdum. But he calls it kitsch because he wants to rebel against the art world establishment that rejects representation. And
so he's basically saying, oh, you're gonna deem my work as kitsch, whatever you do. So I'm going to just simply embrace this. And he has these kind of, I suppose, dark fantasy elements, that you'd call them. But the style of painting itself is hugely influenced by Rembrandt. And the thing with Odd Nerdrum is, if you are taught by Odd Nerdrum, you invariably end up painting like him, just as Rembrandt students would basically be indistinguishable in some cases from Rembrandt's own style.
Yeah. Or Titian's students, yeah.
Is this similar to like Egon Schiele being influenced by Gustav Klimt? Because I do see a little bit of Gustav Klimt in his work.
Well, in some ways, but Schiele had really his own.
With Schiele, Lev, I think Schiele was greatly enamored with Klimt because they met when Schiele was 18, and Klimt actually said to Schiele when he met, he said, "Why are you asking me to teach you? You already draw better than me." Which obviously is a very, very complimentary way of saying that you have potential. So Klimt, you can see in Schiele's early work, if you put in like Egon Schiele work from like 1902 or 1 or something like that, I suppose he'd probably be too young. But 1908, for example, his work shows a massive influence of Klimt. But there's a desire in Schiele's later 20s. He died at 28, but in the last sort of 5 years of his career, I think he definitely strove to get away from Klimt, consciously get away from Klimt, and shed the influence of Klimt. Because he was actually, Klimt was kind of on the decline in terms of popularity. Klimt has already kind of had the peak of his career, and Schiele was one of the most celebrated artists in Vienna at the time when he died from the flu. So if you put in, for example, the picture Lev Hermits by Egon Schiele, this is actually a painting that Schiele himself did of himself and Klimt in a sort of symbolic way. I think it's called The Hermits.
Found it. Here we are.
So and you can see in this. Sorry, Hermes, go on.
I was just going to ask, do you feel that the issues of finding your own artistic voice are more pronounced at like an atelier than an actual art school? I mean, my overarching thought is that for a artist to carve out their own space is kind of a universal issue. I mean, is it drastically more pronounced in that different methodology than an art school, or what?
Art school very much is about your own voice, but ateliers, like you gotta follow.
Ateliers is about the voice of tradition, basically the voice of the way we do it. And if you try and do it your way in an atelier, you'll be told you can't do it that way. You have to do it our way. But the reasoning behind this is, if you teach somebody to paint representationally, then he'll be able to recreate what he sees and understand the fundamentals of representational painting, and from then he can move in, as Klimt did. Klimt probably being one of the best examples of this, to move away from purely representational and academic styles of art and into styles of art which are eclectic. What you say, Klimt is a very eclectic artist. He's got huge influences from all over Europe and even Japan. So I suppose finding your own voice is also a lot about stepping out of the shadow of your teaching and of your master. But there's ways of doing that which are not just kind of screaming in rebellion, in against the establishment. There's a respectful way of seceding from tradition and seceding from the teachings of your master, which keeps those traditions alive actually more.
So this was
it's like in wrestling. It's like Tanahashi in New Japan. He broke from tradition, but he still kept with. I know that's such a fucking stupid. That's such a geo example right there. But
so these two pieces that I put on the screen here. So these are also works by Gustav Klimt, right?
Yeah. So those are mid-period Klimt works. Those are, or not even mid-period. He'd be probably in his early 20s when he painted these, and these obviously show a very distinct academic influence. And if you look at
detail.
Yeah, he's almost it's like photorealism in the way. And then if you look, for example, Lev, at a Klimt that he painted in, say, 1917, something, even one of the ones, I don't know, even one of the portraits, like, there's one like The Bride, for example, or The Life and Death, where it's gone from extremely photorealistic academic to really kind of moving into expressionism. He's obviously influenced by, he's less concerned with representation really. It's more about the pattern and the ornament.
There we go.
Nobody pays attention to his landscapes. That's probably like one of my favorite Klimt output would be his landscapes, but it seems everyone favors like Lady in Gold and things like that. So
yeah, well, I love I think his landscapes are stunning. But you know, with the landscapes, he expressed kind of a desire to structuralize nature and to deconstruct, actually a deconstruction of nature, in a very modernist way, in the sense that we're going to look at this in a way nobody's ever looked at this before. And this is, in a way, I suppose, a continuation from the pre-Raphaelite way of looking at nature, where they looked at nature in a way no one ever looked at it before, because they looked at it closer than anyone else and strove to recreate it more minutely than anyone else. Whereas he strove to simplify and to kind of turn things into pattern and ornament.
There's a symbolism, a religiosity, a mythos that he's trying to create as well with his more representational works, that I think is in a way, this is where the Paul Joseph Watson people get it wrong. And you know, me and Matthew, we talk about this a lot, about how modern art really was sort of an alchemy that was trying to transpose these different forces stripped from out of their context in different lands. It wasn't purely this caricature of like pure atheistic deconstruction. There was a heart to it that was more that was more trying to grasp at the ungraspable, if you will.
Well, modernism itself, I suppose, as embodied by someone like Klimt, it's a forward-thinking, forward-moving idea, but you keep, in the case of Klimt especially, you keep one foot grounded in tradition and you stride forward with the other foot into modernity, into the future. Yes. And that's, to me, an ideal.
Whereas like now we are in metamodernism, we've transcended every link with tradition.
I wouldn't know about metamodern. I mean, I'm contrary against it, because the people that are ostensibly metamodernists are bugmen, but like I get what people mean by metamodern. I think that one person on Twitter, and forgive me if he's watching, I forget who he is, but we were talking about metamodernism, and he said, you know, there's probably, you know, Gio, if you wanted to write about it, there's probably a left and a right metamodern. The right metamodernism is sort of like what we're doing now with meme culture. We're trying to bring back a new sincerity that is using sort of the tools of digital simulacra against itself. Like nobody TM would probably be a metamodernist, but yet left metamodern is like this fucking Luke Turner, Sheila Booth nonsense, where they're like the swaying between modernity and post. It's basically, put it this way, it's like neoliberals wanting sincerity when they realize the horrors of what they created by deconstructing everything. So now it's like the liberals, the rad libs, they're like, well, let's have sincerity again, meaning let's have, you know, woke politics or whatever in media, because they have to be like, because they obviously realized what Frederick Jameson realized about postmodernism, which is there's like this backdoor reactionary thinking there. So they're like, oh shit, now what are we gonna do? So they're like, how about metamodernism, where it's like we go between modern sincerity and postmodernism. It's just a fucking mess. But there is a good basis of metamodernism out there. I don't want to, you know, be too, you know, demonizing of it. It's just the metamodernists themselves are, you know, very, very scummy people, especially Luke Turner. But that's
would this music video, would this American music video be an example of it? By
Gio,
the way?
sorry. But Gio, how would you define the current moment, like what we're living through right now? Because it definitely has, it's definitely beyond postmodernism at this moment, because we are able to look at it and laugh at it. You know, it's like we can dissect it. You know, so.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. It's like as we can dissect it, the more that we are able to dissect it, the more we are withdrawn from the object. So where are we standing in your view? This is why I use the term meta, but in the sense of like in Latin, like just transcending, like we've transcended postmodernism right now, because we're able to mock it, we're able to dissect it, we're able to analyze it, so therefore we're no longer living within it.
That's a great question. I think I'll answer, then I'll give, you know, other people the opportunity. But I think that in some ways, I think we haven't experienced the full sort of potentialities or even ontological possibilities of postmodernism. I mean, certainly the early internet had some of that, and a lot of the aesthetic choices that were being made. But for example, the book that I would recommend that I have, it's called Art Happens Here, where it's about early internet artwork. But I think that hypermodernism would probably be a good word for it. We live in a hypermodern age.
Why not? Yeah.
Yeah, like John David Ebert has a lot of good insight, although he's, currently not in the best of shape right now on the internet. But I think that his work is invaluable in this regard. I think that hypermodernism is a good descriptive, although metamodernism, I would think, is a subsect of the hypermodern epoch, and postmodernism as well would probably be a very integral aspect of hypermodernism, because we haven't yet. A lot of people say that we talk about postmodern this and postmodern that, but it's like we haven't even experienced full-on modernity yet. But maybe, who knows? That's a scary thought. But
do you think it definitely has to connect with transhumanism at this point?
Yeah, transhumanism is the modernist fantasy in toto. I mean, even a lot of artwork that was done in the 19th century, certainly in the early 20th century, like I'm thinking of who was the
Frankenstein.
Frankenstein. Metropolis would be a good example. I forget the director's name, the German director.
Fritz Lang.
Fritz Lang, yeah. That would be a good people were thinking about this, and we like to think that we're very clever in stating that we know about this stuff, but transhumanism really is modernism du jour. Even just embracing the instrumentalization of mankind as such, that is like total, the machines become us now.
Yes, like the artist's brain on Neuralink. What is it?
Yeah. Yeah, which reminds me of
merging of minds. Like, imagine if you could merge through the machine with some, like you and Matthew merging through the machine. What could you create?
Oh God!
Not do that.
Don't even.
I don't want to merge with anyone. I think transhuman. I see. Sorry to burst in, but I think this is all completely irrelevant rubbish. Honestly, no. And
Paige, get Gennady on it. Come on, we need Gennady.
Who cares about Gennady? I'm sorry. It's just this guy's just.
Gennady, I'm sorry.
It's just a thing you roll out to laugh at. Honestly, it's just stupid. I mean, I understand that art has to maybe engage with some of the, I suppose, what you'd call the alienation and dehumanization that technology imposes upon us. But I think a lot of this metamodern, and contemporary art, the way they deal with it is kind of trying to force it deeper down your throat. Whereas I don't think there's anything really to be proud of in saying you're completely untethered from any kind of artistic tradition of, and being only very loosely kind of in dialogue with artists from the past. But we are in a kind of a state of stasis, I suppose, at the moment. That's kind of the main thing people feel these days, is that they feel like everything is kind of blurred. Post 9/11, I suppose, that there is a kind of a blurring and a stasis.
I understand exactly how you feel, like this stasis, because I'm ancient, so I lived through this before.
You're not that ancient.
No, well, I was alive.
Milk material.
I siempre viva. So basically,
never ask a lady her age.
Nobody can ask me my age because I'm eternal. Like in the early 90s, you had this sense of stasis, that nothing was happening, and suddenly you started having all this amazing movements, starting with grunge. And I know everybody's so over it, but at the time it was mind-blowing. And then when fucking Kurt blew his mind, we were all like, what a cop-out, what happened there? And I think that kind of kick-started a lot of what now we understand as, the craziness of rock suicidal tendencies and all that.
The decadence of it. Decadent suicide.
Yeah. Your rock and roll suicide.
You see this. You definitely see this still played out in microcosmic ways these days, lady. In terms of things like like Cloud Rap, for example. You have Little Peep who died, I think 2 or 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and he was, people say, oh, he's a Kurt Cobain, but he's kind of a mini Kurt Cobain, and everything is a lot more crystallized now. It's smaller forms,
Yes.
and they're forgotten a lot faster as well, I find, because people have this more of this kind of steady conveyor belt of information constantly being pumped into their heads. Even somebody as memorable and as wonderful as Little Peep, he's a genius to me, but he's a lot of people
Absolutely.
don't really, it's kind of already been.
I remember that when it happened.
We're waiting for the next young genius to kill himself.
Yeah, but it was like the nihilism and everything that surrounded it. It was like, because you had, it's like Cobain maybe was derivative of Jim Morrison, and Little Peep is derivative of Kurt Cobain. So
I suppose you could say these are types, like
27 Club.
You have archetypes.
It's a powerful
archetypes
archetype,
being played out.
artist.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
David Foster Wallace, for example, he was another rock star, not rock star figure. I mean, as rock star as you could get in literature, but yet he succumbed to his own demons, I guess.
Well, Gio, it's Dionysian.
The reason...
It's utterly Dionysian in
yes.
its, in its essence, but you have it now. It's perfect you see this world coming through this Dionysian rites, because where we're getting right now is to the world of the dark chthonic mother,
Yes. Yeah, exactly. The way Paglia talks about it.
Yes. You see, in the castration of Attis, you get the reign of Cybele, Cibeles, the great mother. So it's kind of similar, you have the death of this young Dionysian icons of pop culture, and that ushers in the age of the dark, all-encompassing mother.
Yeah, Ethan Ralph looks like he's getting ready to get devoured by the mother there on the beach.
Well, Ethan Ralph is getting devoured by his own alcoholism here, but I think...
I just wanted to say something really quickly about the Dionysian impulse and the desire to kind of immerse yourself in the darker, the filth and the underbelly of the world. Because there's a passage from Bronze Age Mindset, which I retweeted the other day, that somebody posted, when he talks about how if the right is ever going to make any progress, or the distant or esoteric right is ever going to make any real cultural progress, there are going to have to be people who choose to willingly immerse themselves into the dark underbelly and what they'd call degenerate, and actually get down to the nitty-gritty of understanding the darker side of the human psyche, and not just denying it exists, like this kind of white guilt fantasy of 50s America we're all going to live in forever.
But
crush degeneracy. You can't just crush degeneracy because it's inside you.
You have to really know a mind of someone like Ethan Ralph, for instance, to see the disgusting darkness.
That's right.
But no, it's true. It's like with the YouTuber Pill Eater. He was saying the other video of his, Francis Nelly. He was saying about how you could have the Snow White guilt fantasy of suburban moms and 13-year-olds going to the mall, and there's no minorities, and I'll plead the fifth on that one. But it's like, in some ways you have to really realize that, do you want a vibrant quote unquote Western culture that fights for something, or do you want a replication of Norman Rockwell 50s Americana? But
this culture
less
is
black
dead.
people,
This is dead culture. Right? This is dead culture.
This
exactly.
is the culture of Thanatos.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's completely sucked of any vitality. It's a husk of itself, and that's why it always is doomed to fail. Unfortunately, when these people try and dream, that's why the alt-right failed, because it was a pastiche of various things that were never really even kind of real in the first place, that they wanted to evoke, but they didn't. There was no in between. There was no interim step, because it basically involves killing a bunch of people. Am I allowed to say that on YouTube? Lev, I'm sorry,
no, but I
can't
think
say that word
that
on YouTube.
Yeah, I think that the
Well, I mean, I
secret.
think that's a little bit skewed view of what no white guilt says. I think what his message more so is that he wants white people to have an identity of their own instead of this degenerate like I don't have a word for it really of what's happening with society nowadays with young white people. They don't have any type of identity of their own, and
Or
they're
it's an
constantly told
anti-identity.
that they're, aside from being evil. So his message is for, I mean, I don't know.
So
I don't think
you're playing
no
right
white
into
guilt
the
has ever
hands.
advocated for genocide.
It
So
doesn't matter
I
if he's
just,
advocated for it. Not it's implicit in everything these people say. It's absolutely implicit because the world, this whole Richard Spencer thing, peaceful ethnic cleansing. We're going to have, what a bunch of fucking hogwash. How the fuck are you going to peacefully ethnic cleanse 36 million people from America? It's absolutely absurd.
Richard Spencer, I mean, never mind. Come on. I don't want to get into the whole I'm not gonna do this, but
Well, I'm saying you
I
have
think
to
that's a little
acknowledge
bit
the world
skewed.
is.
I'm just saying I think that's a kind of like a very extreme skewed view of what no white guilt says. I think that we could critique his view of, modernity and where the world is going without saying that he wants to, genocide non-whites, because I think that there's a greater message to what he is saying. I believe he's even said before that he believes that all cultures, all races, everyone deserves that identity and that community. We all deserve that. So that's more what his message is. That's all I'm saying.
But the community
Well,
aspect
this
has
is
been.
maybe this is because this is a very American thing. I don't know. It's probably because
I
in
think,
America you
yeah.
have
It's
this
not an
white.
American thing. I think it's a pan-European thing, but
Well,
now I sound
when
like
it
Richard
comes to
Spencer.
that-
Thanks, guys.
when it
I
comes
think
to
that basically what's happened is that this monoculture that liberalism is trying to impose to all corners of the world is replacing the original identities that people may have had, and people feel lost because this doesn't give them anything. It's like,
Yeah,
how do you
I'd
kill a
agree.
tree?
Exactly. And that's why we have deaths of despair happening amongst young white men.
Absolutely, because how do you kill a tree? What do you cut? The roots, of course, so
Yeah.
you have all these rootless people who are trying to live and they don't know where they're going. They can't feel the earth.
But
They
the reason
can't
why
look
they
at the
can't feel the
sky
earth
for
is there are too
something
many.
eternal.
There's too much creature comforts. I think that's what it kind of comes down to. To most people, when they were feeling the earth, was when they didn't really have a choice but to feel the earth, because otherwise they'd starve.
No, but look at now. Yes, but look at now. The opportunity that I've been since this pandemic started. I'm a person that basically I'm traveling every 2 months or maybe even more, because I mainly work with music festivals and artists, so I'm always traveling. And this year, for the first time in 18 years, I'm not joking, first time in 18 years, I spent half a year in my neighborhood in Argentina, unable to move. And that, forced me to, the first 2 months, I was fighting it constantly. And at one point I was like, look, I'm not going to win. I can't fight this. I'd rather transform myself or, keep moping. And that's how you root yourself. Everybody has discovered what are the important things through the quarantines, because it's the family, it's the friends that are real.
But you weren't the one who rooted yourself, though. You were not the one
Mm-hmm.
who rooted yourself. It was the quarantine that forced you to root yourself. So in a
No,
way,
but I think if you can use this as an excuse, whatever
Sure.
you can find as an excuse to root yourself. No, actually, I was rooted 3 years ago when right-wing Twitter Anon saved my life from deepest depression after my father died, and I discovered who I was when I was a little girl. Because I've spent so much time on the road working nightlife, it's absolutely crazy. It's the upside down world. So what a lot of people don't understand is they have this idea of me as this super trad icon, but because I lived in the depths of the dark Teutonic Ocean, where everything is upside down, and I have seen all that, I was able to emerge because I was able to look up. And that's what everybody should do. It's you have to find a way
I
to
completely
root
agree
yourself
with that,
and
lady.
look
I
up.
think, I completely agree with that.
how many people, though, in your situation were part of it and did not emerge? Because you may be in the minority when it comes to people who are able to be in that experience and then come out better. Like for most people, again, it's like if there's no atelier, going back to what we were talking about before, if there is no structure that is kind of forced upon people, that either you do all these things like your master shows you how to do, these particular techniques of drawing. If you don't do it, then you're not in the club. And those kind of limitations, I think they can strengthen people when it comes to developing this fundamental technique, this fundamental craft, and otherwise they can go out and do whatever they want after that. But if there's no structure like that, it's going to make everyone weaker. So it's like, I don't think there's like an imposition of, we're going to spread all this liberalism and everybody's going to go crazy. I think it's just a natural progression of creature comforts when people have more of an opportunity to sit around and not do anything.
And consumption, I suppose, as well would be the main driving force.
But nobody's forcing that consumption. It's just there's more stuff. There's more of an opportunity to buy that stuff. There's more of an opportunity to sit around.
But this is what we call capitalist realism. Isn't that capitalist realism? I suppose, where you say, well, nobody's forcing this on you, but can you actually imagine any alternative?
People are gaining status by what they consume and what they can consume, and instead of getting status from being a part of a community and earning your rank or having a rank that you were born into.
But again,
go ahead, Les.
But that kind of community, it again, I think, came from there not being any other choice but to have the community.
Yeah.
That was the deal.
Totally.
Social mobility via consumption, basically.
Well,
it's like go ahead, fuck. No. I feel like.
Well, just a quick thought here. I would rather, though, us be in that situation, because at least it allows people like you and other people to have economic mobility and to pursue things they want to pursue, as opposed to have some fucking bureaucrat dictating what you are or aren't allowed to do. I don't see that ending in any positive way if people try to go that direction, and that's why I'm very concerned with people who do want to revive the old ways, and in doing so, it's not really going to be the philosopher kings that are going to take charge. It's usually going to be the thugs that will end up taking charge of any kind of structure like that at the end of the day. They're going to kick everybody else out because might makes right, and
just like in the Soviet Union,
exactly.
Just like in the
that's
Soviet
Union. That's where I'm from.
Bio-Leninism.
Yeah. Well, Matthew, did you know? I mean, I don't want to go on a whole rant here because Buff is probably not going to be happy if he's in the chat, but I am from the Soviet Union. I was born in St. Petersburg, Russia. So I know exactly like the kind of things that end up happening there. And I'm not going to go on the whole rant about it. People have heard it ad nauseum now. All the nice people in the chat, they've already heard it. But I wanted to draw your attention.
No, but I think that this is again what like we're talking about people like Richard Spencer. I think that as much as I may like rag on him from time to time, I think that he's like, he's someone who I think does know what an aesthetic sensibility is, but at the same time, the problem is that white nationalism had such a terrible aesthetic from the 90s onwards, like the fucking skinhead David Duke, like stuff like that. I think that the problem is when we're all dealing with the issue of trying to recapitulate art and spirituality and ethnos. And the problem is that these things aren't going to come about by sort of LARPing an older reproach to any of those things. The problem is that with the alternative right is they thought that, basic bitch remix culture was going to do it for them. Like, taking Disney songs and who was that guy's name? Morocco. Like shit like that, I think is like pretty much dead. Like people know.
Yes, it was funny at the moment, but it didn't have any staying power. Yeah.
Well, these things age so badly. But I mean, Gio,
but nowadays,
it's interesting what you said.
Like
it's interesting what you said there about the
cleaner or something. Is just, I don't know.
Okay.
But at the same time, I think that to create a space to even link up artistic output with ethnos is something incredibly verboten in the contemporary art world, unless you're someone from like the developing world and you get a free pass. And even some
Like
of the
me?
artwork. Yeah. Well, no, Argentina, you're white. Remember, you're white. You're Argentinian.
They are white.
For example, sorry to cut you off, Matt, but like a quick
It's
example would be the one guy, the Spanish guy, but he's British, that won the Turner Prize along with that other three of them. Last year, they all won it, all four of them. What was his name? Carlos something. I wanted to write something about him for Rocker Reviews. I might do it, but his artwork that he does this like on the very superficial level. You could say that like, oh, it's about the migrants, it's about the poor migrants, but at the same time, he's really critiquing like what it means to be displaced in this like globalized world, and it really is almost like trad and reactionary in some way. Not trad, but like as modern art as the contemporary art progresses, the contemporary art world, it's the closest you're going to get to a critique of globalization and neoliberalism. And so I think like this is the problem with the Paul Just Watson types, and this is a problem with a lot of the original alt-right people, is that they really were just focusing on like pop culture, and they already like bracketed the modern art world in their minds as something that's completely like verboten and not useful. But really, like even nowadays, even like some of the art world that the critics like Jerry Saltz praises, a lot of that shit can be totally retconned into something that is quite reactionary. Although I would caution this need of like mining the contemporary world or mining critical theory for like nuggets of baseness. I think that's a strategy.
But that's very trendy. That's very trendy at the moment.
Yeah, it's very trendy at the moment.
I just wanted to go back quickly about what you're saying, Gio, about ethnos. Just quickly, just to touch on, if you make, like you're saying ethnos and spirituality, and what was the other thing?
Ethno, spirituality in contemporary art. Yeah.
I'm saying that
nationalism,
in the case
ethnos,
of,
in
the case of the alt-right, whenever the alt-right has tried to create art, it's always been in service of the overarching umbrella of ethnos, and that's just not the way to do it. You have to have art be the first thing you go to, and the ethnic elements have to be secondary. You have to put the fundamentals of art at the forefront. You can't, otherwise it just ends up as crude propaganda. And I wanted to say, Lev, if you want to look at an art which deals with ethnic pride, you could look at Alphonse Mucha, his Slav epic series of murals he did. These are vast paintings, a series of, I think there's about 8 or 9 maybe, just called the Slav epic, and they basically go through the history of the Slavic people in a very romanticized and idealized way. He was a Czech, Mucha. As Czech, yeah, and he, I suppose this is a way where you look at the scale of this is just mind blowing to me. This is a way in which you have ethnic components and ethnic pride and a sense of groundedness and rootedness in art, but without it being simply a propagandistic piece about we're the best.
Well, Diego Rivera,
I will say,
Mexican.
I feel like I just have to interrupt you there because I was a part of the Perfume Nationalist podcast, and I did talk about a lot of queer art from a right-wing perspective, and it wasn't all. It was absolutely not about. It wasn't about it wasn't like the pause button, which I'm assuming that's like what you're talking about usually, because that's the only like right-wing art like podcast besides TPN that I can think of. TPN, I guess, isn't alt-right, but there's
other ones.
Alt-right.
I mean, even like Colin, for instance, he talks about films, Millennial Woes. There's a few other people. There are other people that
does
do
exist.
It good.
It's just it just
it's not going to
be as popular as the people who have like financiers like giving them money. So
like kayfabe. No, like for example, with Jack, he talks about and. I discovered him before the Perfume Nationalist, but he talks about, for instance, soiled cinema. Like that's like
I was going to say Tai as well. Tai is a very good example of doing that. critiquing art at a neutral level while being a right-wing artist. Yeah, while being based in red pilled.
By the way, who here remembers We're Back, a dinosaur story?
Oh, I love that. Oh God, I love that movie. It's so sad.
Yeah,
Was
I
that
remember
was that Hanna-Barbera animation? Was that Hanna-Barbera?
That's a good question. No, I think it was it DreamWorks? Let's see. It was Steven Spielberg. So it was Steven Spielberg presents an adventure for the whole family. We're Back, a dinosaur story. Anyway,
It's really scary
when
too
I recall
for kids.
the We're Back, the statue, it immediately reminded me of We're Back.
We have to go
The
back.
best children's movies are scary.
That's true.
Oh, yeah.
My mom
Yes.
made me watch the scariest kids movies. I don't like. Wow, God.
Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Well, that's like a Grimm's fairy tales, right? Like all of those were scary as fuck. You know, they involved murder, they involved
Mutilations,
Yeah.
possession.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But come
Lots of
on,
bad
like
endings.
they're like the Tales from the Dark Forest. What do you want?
Mhm.
Germanics
Tales of the
are
Crypt Keeper was
brutal.
like one of my favorite kids show, by the way.
Oh my God, I was
So
obsessed.
So scared. So scared.
Bordello of Blood.
That one, yeah. My favorite one, it was the best one, was the Hunter one, where like in the very end, the Crypt Keeper says, you know, you better take care of nature or the supernatural would take care of you. So that was very like, almost like Anne Prim, because this hunter was like hunting endangered species for profit. And then the hunter had the other hunter was cursed by the shaman, and he had to transfer the curse of being the what was the creature called, Unani or something like that. Onaya was the demon of the forest, of the jungle, and so he had to transfer that onto the new hunter, and so he lived forever, like being like the king of the dark jungle. So yeah, but sorry, that was a fucking.
Well, this is something we can read. I want to talk with Hermes and ask him about when it comes to a lot of these various esoteric mystery school practices. I think this is something that could be used to, let's say, revive, like, if not like ethnos, just like any cultural art movement that has to do with certain things that were passed down from ancestor to ancestor. Like, there could be certain elements that some people in America may be able to radiate with, like once they, I don't know, track either their ancestors or get in touch with the ancestors of their land and create like some kind of a, I mean, I know it's kind of heretical, Geo, but some kind of a neo-paganist movement, just in terms of recognizing that there are these other entities that are around them in these very special places like the woods, and being able to connect that with an art movement.
Yeah, that's obviously a wide-ranging sort of subject, and I know that a lot of people online like to sort of criticize neo-paganism as LARPy or any of the other sort of epithets there. You make a good point. I am sympathetic to all peoples, by the way, who track back their history and find what their great ancestors were involved in insofar as worship rites and ritual, because as we've all been discussing, we're sort of unmoored, and it almost falls to the individual to sort of re-ground themselves, as Lady Astor sort of alluded to earlier. I kind of take a syncretic approach. As most Americans, I was raised nominally Christian or whatever, so it's kind of hard to kind of get underneath that sort of root programming, if you will. But yeah, I'm not a scholar by any means, but I've found that that's very fertile ground for at least the art selections that I like to put on my timeline, where, allusions to either Icelandic and Norse and or German paganism. I think I see an image and it just strikes me as true in a sense.
I think that's very noble and very, very honest of you, Hermes, to talk about that. I think that's recognizing that you are unmoored, and we all are cast adrift to some degree by modernity and post-modernity. That's the first step to really actually taking up a sort of a heroic narrative of your own life and your own creative output, definitely.
But then I don't know. But then I think, like, at the same time, in the contemporary art world, there is in one sense an expression of identity, but it's very like freeze-dried, packaged, woke politics identity that is like rooted within the neoliberal capitalist realist system as a whole. So, for example, like however many, like in Canada, we have national arts grants, and you see like this one art installation was about this like feminist thing where you get to walk through a vagina and inside's like a lot of like feminine that type of stuff, right? But at the same time, I think like in some ways a lot of identity politics, they sort of collapse into a homogenous whole in the contemporary art world. I fear that like a lot of like based in trad and red pill white identity politics would almost, I think, suffer the same fate. So that's always the debate. It's like we were going to do.
Got you.
That was one of it. I believe that was that's a Japanese thing, but no, Korean. Sorry, there was this Korean. It's like a museum of a phallic worship in Korea, where it's like you get to go into the giant like cock hole or whatever. You get to sound into the shaft. But
now there was a gentleman who I'm not gonna post his work because obviously it's not safe for work. But he spray painted art, like he spray painted like the paint out of his butthole onto the canvas, and and here is a photo that I just found of him. I found this photo of him just on Facebook, but this is what he looks like now.
That's not like he better be using some type of like face paint or whatever. Like not, I wouldn't want to be using like actual artist pigments.
Yeah, you know what you go back to often, this idea that contemporary art has this sort of profane obsession with the body and with bodily functions.
Oh yes.
Which I suppose you can trace this back in somewhat ways to like the Viennese actionists and even like abstract expressionism, where it becomes about the body, in the same way that, lady, you were talking about earlier about how medieval art, as it transformed by humanism into the Renaissance, it became about the body, and therefore kind of maybe an obsession or an idealization of human bodies. But nowadays you have this filthy profane worship of functions like that.
Rudolf Steiner says that the obsession of the Egyptians with mummifying the body was in order to root the soul to the material body, because in those days we were more ethereal, so they wanted to ground the souls to the bodies. And now that you're mentioning this, I'm seeing like a procession of going like from this body rooting of the Egyptians running down to nowadays that is about like it's all is body, everything is body.
Well, that's right. You lose the soul. You lose the soul aspect.
Yes.
Well, Steiner also believed that when the body is within like the limit of extreme pain, that the soul is drawn towards the body in those like liminal moments. And it's funny because Steiner, believe it or not, he actually was friends with and wrote eulogies for Nietzsche. I never knew this till I watched this Jeffrey Mishlove talk recently. But they had a sort of a somewhat professional rivalry in a lot of ways. For example, Steiner said that Nietzsche, he was wrong about this. He said that Nietzsche wasn't going to be known as a great philosopher, but he was going to be known as a great poet, which I guess he was half.
But it's the opposite.
Yeah, it's the opposite.
Maybe Nietzsche would have liked to be known as a great poet, at least the first one, at least in the Origins of Tragedy. And that's like, I think that back then he would have liked to be known as a poet.
It feels like there's also, with the sort of grotesque obsession of the body, what we're seeing is the human body after the death of God. So Nietzsche has proclaimed it, and here we all are, sort of without it, and the body being a representation of God in that sense is completely demolished as a concept, and so all that we're left
the
with
Imago Dei is gone.
Yes, precisely.
And this is also why, like, liberal progressives like have this obsession with maiming and changing their bodies. You know, it's like the body does not belong to God, but it's mine to do as I please, and that's a very demonic.
Well, it's Gnosticism,
concept.
secular Gnosticism,
yes,
really.
absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
Speaking
you have
about grotesque
someone...
bodies, how am I doing, chaps?
Amazing.
Very
That's actually pretty
good.
dope.
Wow.
His face
He
now.
looks like Trump a bit. I have to say, he does look like Donald Trump a little bit here, but I have to fix that up.
But
Don't
he
worry about
drowned
it.
on the beach and was pulled from.
Hopefully he doesn't drown tonight, though. Hopefully he doesn't drown tonight.
He
Hopefully,
looks
yeah.
a little low energy to be Trump.
Yeah. Profoundly
Well, what are
low
your
energy, Ethan
people-
Ralph.
Are you using any of the sort of grainy mediums in the sand and the
Yeah,
bits
that's actually
surrounding?
coffee grinds,
Yeah.
believe it or not. if
Yeah,
you-
yeah, great.
Yeah.
I hope you.
You know what his body
very
reminds
good
me
at
of?
using those.
His body reminds me actually of a bell-shaped flower. So that is something that you see.
Well, maybe.
You see the resemblance? At least
I think
least
it's
I
a
saw.
bell-
Oh,
Colors,
yeah,
yeah.
there you go.
Yeah, we got to look at the bright side of a lot of these, very visceral human qualities that are represented now. But I don't know. I mean, it is still a weird thing when it comes to, like that poster with that lady who has the tattoo of like "I am God" written on her body. It's like, yes, I understand that that's going away from this more sacred way of having the body. People making decisions on
Lev, throw up
body
my
mod-
painting, by the way, in the chat. Throw up the Triumph of Discordia one, the Femen one, because I wanted to paint that one. I am God, that woman. But the one I did a year ago was the Job. He's praying to God, the destruction of. Well, you'll see in the chat. Just
Let me
pull it up.
let me find it right now. But to what I was saying there, it's like that is an example of, I guess you could say, going away from this sacredness, but at the same time, since human beings are never really going to get to that level of sacredness, it's like, which way do you want to go? Like, you're always going to be, a little bit imperfect. Like, look at, for example, Bruegel, the way that Bruegel portrayed a lot of the saints in his paintings. They weren't godlike. They were very simple, like even like the baby Jesus. He didn't portray him as like this, blush-faced, angelic being. It was a lot more human-like. But yeah, like Mr. Cool Eyes. Like I would say that Bruegel had some Mr. Cool Eyes energy in his paintings.
Oh my God, I love that you know who that is. People don't know who that is anymore.
Oh no, that's.
We live in a world post Mr. Cool Eyes. How sad is that?
That's old school.
Well, you know what? Robert Hughes said that Robert Crumb was like the modern day Bruegel, which is kind of true. You could kind of see it with Hughes, with Robert Crumb's work. But who is the Bruegel of our
I don't know.
era?
Bruegel was interested in
Bitcoin.
Bruegel was so interested in having large bottom women sit on his face.
By the way,
well, I guess the grotesqueness of the human form in some ways.
I don't know if this is intentional or not, but the second photo of Mr. Cool Eyes matches up with the skull as like a head.
Yeah.
The first photo.
He looks like Nito from Dark Souls now.
But I'm trying to find
So good.
a good example of the.
Thank you,
Oh, here we
Papa
go.
Nito.
So here is a painting of Bruegel of Jesus Christ, the one that I was talking about here. Admiration. Let's see, is it loaded here? Yeah, you guys could see it on the screen. So you see how very simple, very earthy a lot of these beings look. Even Jesus, like Jesus doesn't really look like anything that special here. So I don't know, like something like that to me is a
Well, that's the
yeah.
essence of Christianity, really, isn't it, Lev? I mean, it's about humanity and godliness kind of amalgamated into one. But then I think that's why medieval painting, we were talking about Renaissance versus medieval, they really got away from that. You're right that they turned it into too much of an idealized, stylized kind of thing, especially with things like mannerism. And it became too gaudy and too obsessed with its own kind of
Baroque.
pomposity and its own wealth. And that's what the pre-Raphaelites were trying to get away from when they decided, well, we're going to go back to medievalism. So I think that nowadays I think Christian art nowadays needs to maybe take a look at this again, and combine good draftsmanship and good vision with this, back to kind of earthiness, back to maybe the humanity of Christ, but not in a way where it just kind of reduces him down to another body. It's a very difficult line to walk, really. I think Christian art still has most power.
We got to return.
Well, like in the way that Caravaggio broke from tradition and humanized a lot of the biblical stories, like that. Like
and
we're going
Caravaggio
too far.
Was a man with, I suppose you'd call Caravaggio a man with definite sort of Dionysian impulses as well. He was a fighter and a drinker, and he loved young boys and all this rubbish. But
I was going to say he loved young boys.
But he was at the same time capable of creating these works of great power and humanity and intimacy. So I think that's what you need in an artist nowadays. You can't just have somebody who's allergic to getting their hands dirty, and they have to have a history and a history with maybe the darker aspects of life.
We go always back to rooting ourselves. And you also just mentioned something that I think it's essential in this connection, which is unity. Unity brings us to the idea of beauty as a pattern of an idea form that's lovely, that, you naturally understand it, it's like a pattern that is harmonic. Whereas, what is ugly, we can say that is that thing that has not been mastered by pattern somehow.
Well, so almost as if like a mathematical sublime is like there's a harmony to it.
Yes.
There's
Well, when it comes to this,
because even like what people think is ugly, I still think has like some type of essence of beauty. Like, for example, people
Abject
that
beauty.
look at.
Well,
like even
this one, for example,
go ahead,
Gustav Adolphus with his horse. I'm not sure if it was painted with a sense of irony or not, because if you take a look at the details of the horse, it just has such a dumb-looking face. But it's like, were they aware what they were doing? Because this is really funny. Like, were people chuckling when they saw this horse?
But in 500 years, they're going to look at people who drew like Tumblr faces with the big lips and the big eyes, and they're going to look. Were they aware that these faces looked so silly and ridiculous at the time? It's just historical perspective. This was just conventions of art at the time, I think.
You mean if the people that drew the person that drew like Sonic Cold Steel, they're not gonna.
Oh God. Cold Steel.
That'll be in the British Museum as a historical archive.
Cold
Steel the Hedgehog.
What I love about this horse, though, it looks like a human is trapped in the horse. You know what I mean? Like, there's like,
have you seen?
Well, there's a sense of mockery in that horse's demeanor. So
you might want to bring up, Lev. Then, if you like that one, you should bring up the lamb from the Ghent altarpiece. Because they restored the Ghent altarpiece recently, and they uncovered the face of the lamb, and people were alarmed by how supposedly human this lamb's face was. But this is just a medieval understanding of the way these animals were depicted. I don't think that they understood naturalism, or if they did, they consciously kind of abandoned it.
It's like
people
how
are making so many memes about this.
You know how like Christ in early depictions were actually painted androgynously, like there was a feminine quality, because they needed a masculine sort of counterpart. They needed a feminine counterpart. So then they ended up with the Catholic veneration of Mary, which then gave them license to paint Jesus as a trad chad masculine. So.
Because for the ancients, you always need to have the two columns. You need to have the masculine and the feminine balanced and acting together. If you look, like, you always have like this pairs of deities. It's like having Isis, Osiris. You have Hera and Zeus. It's always pairs. And for the classic mythology, you always have the 6 women, 6 men, and they are counterparts.
Or they're 3, like mother, like like 3, like the maiden mother crone.
But that's something different. That's within the feminine archetype, because that would be analogical to the moon phases, because as you know, it's like the moon is first maiden, then it grows to the full moon, the pregnant moon, which is the matron, the mother, and then as it wanes, it heads towards the crone stage, then to go towards the darkness and start it all over again.
And this is essential in art, I think, as well, lady, because this places us as humans, as creators of art, among natural phenomena, you know, and enables us to see ourselves as maybe a part of nature rather than something.
We can never conquer nature. We are the subjects of nature. Only God can conquer nature.
And that's why transhumanism is absurd and retarded.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is why that's the enemy.
Yeah. It's like trying to rip your own leg off, you know.
But even though we don't conquer nature, we are still in a way in a communion with the process of creativity that does go, at least as artists go, it does go beyond just being someone who replicates whatever it is they see. They do add a little bit of daimonic, for lack of a better word, influence.
Yes, we have to listen to the cicadas again. We have to close our eyes and quiet ourselves and listen to the cicadas again.
But with the cicadas, or with any kind of element of nature, there are still fairies in this world. There are still
of course,
jinn, whatever you want to call it. So that is still an aspect that goes beyond.
I live in Argentina, and there's still lots of raw nature, and there's still lots of like natural deities in the Patagonia. You always hear stories about children who were kidnapped by elves. You know, that's. You know, you have like lots of, actually Borges wrote a book about all these creatures, you know, these monsters. That is something that might be interesting, you know, to discuss at some other time. But I always remember there was one of these monsters was like originally from Cordoba, and it was a pork. It was a pig that carried some like iron, some irons, you know, and it was dragging them around the town. So if you heard the sound of some iron clashing, something like that, you had to go away because it was la chancha con cadenas.
Oh man, that's rough. I mean, as far as fairies go, I think that they're okay with the children, but they do sometimes pull pranks on the adults. Like, I've never seen a fairy. There's no way for me to actually say if they're real or not, but there are all these different entities that people talk about existing within the astral realm that communicate with people either in states of inebriation or if they happen to go into the forest. Exactly. So when it comes to that kind of world, it's like, if we were already in communion with God, then there wouldn't be any need for this kind of experience. So it's almost like the fact that we are living here and the fact that we can be creative, it is an interesting question for me, like how far would it be right to go as an artist in terms of what you're able to come up with and create, where, like, when would you be, let's say, criticized for saying, okay, all these weird-looking Pokemon you're creating now, this is already so far away from whatever, you know, from whatever godliness has to be imbued upon the world. Like, where exactly is the line here drawn?
The more imbued in the world of the techne we are, the more removed we are from the source. At least that's how I perceive it. But I have a very kind of like a neo-Platonist basis for my thought. So,
by the way, speaking of demon pigs, check this guy out.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
you may not.
Yeah, sorry, my internet cut out.
That's fine. It was this pig's fault. You may not like it, but this is what pig performance looks like.
Oh God, Lady Adam, what were you saying about the source, the Neoplatonic source?
That the further, like the closer to techne, to the world of materialism and technology you are, the further away that you get from the source with its logos.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, it's true, but in the same way, I think that would be a radical claim against like certain transhumanists, at least, who or rather post-humanists, who view that sort of techne as a way of getting towards some type of what would you call it, machinic spirituality or something of that nature. I think that
the God
in some
the
ways
machine.
it is but then again, like, you know, like I think Heidegger was totally correct in that inframing and technological inframing alienates us from specifically that source that we're trying to get back, the being of beings, right? So I think that, and then that's a primitive reading of Heidegger, but it certainly is true that the more we invest within hyper-technological simulacra, the more that we're sort of alienating ourselves from
Absolutely.
Avenues that were used to be present to us.
Yes, because we're cutting our connections to the source. Mm-hmm. Well, there's so many people that are talking about the calcification of the pineal gland, and that the pineal gland has an optical nerve. So basically what we're cutting is like we're destroying the movie theater inside our minds that connects us to God.
No, I totally get you. I mean, this is going to be broken record time for most of the people who are watching this right now. But as you guys know, I do the meditation, the breathing techniques. I see the white light in the center. I see all the blue and purple colors. So I'm definitely familiar with what you're talking about in terms of what the mind is capable of seeing with the third eye. And this is... yes.
I don't know if you've seen recently, Meta Nomad. He had a podcast with the fellow who is he talks about the DMT entities.
Oh, that was a great podcast.
I haven't listened to it. How is it? Is it good?
It's pretty good. It's one of his best ones.
Is that
you had Dennis McKenna you had on, and yes. I had an experience with him when I was 19 with ayahuasca in Buenos Aires.
Whoa!
What
was that like?
Amazing. Like, for once in my life, I felt like the universe wanted me in this place, that there was a reason for me being here. And it was amazing. It was very intense. Crazy. Yeah, it was very intense. And
there it is.
I was really, really young, and everybody thought like, oh my God, like this little girl is going to do this. And I was like, yeah, bring it. Like, I don't know. I'm just like the sort of person that plunges, into the unknown. Oh, the bell is there. What? Just wait a second. I'm coming back.
Okay. All right. That's pretty interesting that you have that bell. I don't know if anybody else had experience with psychedelics before. I know that I took the, although I did have all these third eye visions before I did this, but I did take the Terence McKenna heroic dose. Yes, of the psilocybin mushrooms, which according to Dennis McKenna is not really a heroic dose. Like, he's already gone past that. But still, the point is that...
What's the heroic dose? How much is,
like,
how many?
5 grams. 5. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I did 5 grams when I did mushrooms.
What was that like for you, Gio? What did you
it was great. I was with my best friend. We were in 2 best friends, actually. We were in this, I'm not going to dox where it is because it's pretty iconic to my town, but we were in this place that was a part of War of 1812 history, put it that way, without doxing myself. And we were, it was pretty amazing. It was in the moonlight, and thank God nobody came by, or else that would have been fucked up, like in the nighttime. But I had a lot of, it was life-changing. It truly was. But I'm fuzzy on the details, but basically, it's the real deal, put it that way. But this is why I think that most people, like I'm talking about 99.9% of people, should not be doing these drugs. I think most people are not ready for them.
I agree.
Normies cannot do it.
Yeah.
No.
I used to grow psilocybin mushrooms. I grew penis envies, which they're called that because they literally look like little flaccid dicks.
Oh yeah, the head.
They're very It's a very strong. It's not a very visual trip, but I did that for a little bit before I started growing oyster and shiitake mushrooms. I started off with the good old.
That's delicious.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, when it comes to the trip that I had, when I was lying in bed with my girlfriend, I saw these fellows over here, the Godhead from the Alex Gray painting, and it looked pretty much like the painting.
And but Lev, was that the painting itself you saw, or was that a vision that looked like the painting? Do you know?
It was pretty much the painting as far as I could see the noses.
But
the
you'd
eyes,
seen that paint. You'd seen that painting beforehand.
Yes, that's the problem, right?
Yeah.
It's like if
no,
I didn't see
I don't
that
think that's
paint-
a. Yeah. Well, no, well, psychedelics they call up things that are already in your RAM in your brain, if you call it. You know.
Yes, but the
You see.
No, I agree. There were things, though, that I saw that I've never seen before. For example, even though in regular meditations I see, the cross or a triangle or a DNA helix, it's basically like that white light expresses itself as different shapes the more intense the meditation goes. But during the mushroom trip, I saw it as a cross around which was this green ring of fire, which looked exactly like the ring that Shiva dances around. And it was just like this constantly undulating green fire that was going on. And yeah.
was there a voice that told you that this is Shiva's ring?
No, but it's very understandable to me as far as Hindu cosmology goes. How you have Shiva and Shakti, where Shakti.
Well, you just had an intuitive understanding of that.
Well, it's like Shakti is the ring of life in a way, and Shiva is the source out of which Shakti goes out of. So it's understandable that when I'm seeing this ring and the cross in this distance, this light of infinity out of which everything comes out of, with the energy like this constantly spinning circle that I see all the time. Like if I close my eyes right now, I'm still seeing that ring. It gets more intense, obviously, the more I do the pranayama, but it's always there. So the idea is that we do have this as above, so below relationship visually with this ring and this dot, and the dot is the ring and the ring is the dot, and this dot expresses itself as different shapes that kind of like combine with each other. Like you could have two circles that combine with each other like this. See what I'm doing with my hands? They combine with each other like this, and that creates the DNA helix. And that DNA helix then creates a three-dimensional tower that spins around it with all these infinite lights that you can like move around and zoom in and zoom out of. I will send that image as well. I have it in here somewhere. But yeah. That's,
what's crazy is that I had a similar experience with one trip where I kept saying, and this was just because I was watching beforehand some Joseph Campbell, but I kept saying the manifold heads of Shiva over and over and over again. And if like Shiva, has the numerous faces when Shiva's doing the dance of destruction and creation. And I remember I distinctly kept musing upon that over and over again. But of course, it was probably just because of Joseph Campbell. So.
Well,
now that you say it, it's really interesting because once I took ayahuasca with this guru called Nagendra, and I felt like the spirit of Kali, and I started speaking in Sanskrit, which I have no idea what to talk like. I have no idea what it's like. And it was really, really weird and wild.
Wow,
what's weird and wild? This is kind of this painting is almost reminding me of one of my favorite Anselm Kiefer works that I wrote about where the man is staring up at the starry sky, the new fake starry sky. Francis E. Deck.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah, I saw that one in the Anselm Kiefer retrospective at the Royal Academy.
Yeah, but that one is, to me, it's one of his most important works because really it's about starting over again into a new mythology where people have to sort of build anew and come up with something else, because it's like all of the old, after the 20th century, all the old signifiers are dead, and we have to sort of
that
pick
ties
up
in,
from the ashes of the wake.
Wait,
that does tie in with what Hermes was saying earlier.
I want to put that painting on the screen. Kiefer. Which painting was that?
If you search Anselm Kiefer, Starry Night or something like that.
Let me see here. Okay, I see it. I think...
Yeah. It's got a weird perspective on it too.
It looks like he's doing the Hitler salute. I'm not sure if this is...
Oh, no, there is a few of them where he's doing Hitler salutes, Anselm Kiefer.
Interesting. So here it is, I believe. Let's see. Is this the one? Let
me see. No. It's where he's lying.
You're
on the
talking
ground.
about the one where he's lying down and looking up. Is that the one where there's a sunflower as well? There's a flower involved.
Yes, yeah. There's a sunflower.
Here, I found it. It's this one, right?
Yes, that one. That's my favorite.
That's
No, I
marvelous
think
painting.
I'm fornicketing over the details here. So I'm pretty much done. Ethan Ralph. Maybe I'll
Let me
fix
see.
up the face a little bit.
Yeah,
later,
don't overwork him. He's looking perfect.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good there, Gio.
Yes.
Yeah, I think he's done. I think
That's
he's
great.
good.
Yeah, I'm thinking
Wait,
he's
one
done.
last. I know because this is. Let me sign it and then go back to my screen again because I'll do the great reveal because I know with watercolor, for instance, it's good to like peel off the thing and get the nice clean edge. So
nice.
So
my darlings, I need to say goodbye.
Oh.
Well, Lady Astor, thank you so much for being
It was
here.
very lovely to speak to you, lady. Nice to finally
speak with you, Lady Astor.
It was lovely. I had lots of fun. Have a great one, guys.
Thank
See you back on the TL.
too.
Bye.
Come again, please.
So one thing before, Gio, you unveil this painting, I just want to show and explain what these two things were. So this is the vision. Some of you guys have already seen it. This is the cross in the center, the star, and this is what the DNA helix three-dimensional tower looked like. And these things, I mean, I'm not really doing them justice in this picture. They were spinning around at an ungodly speed. And
did you create these images, though? Did you create these yourself?
Yeah,
oh,
I just
wow,
did
okay,
it
that's
in Photoshop.
interesting. Yeah, but what do you think is the significance of seeing these things? You know, because I mean, you can. People see a lot of gnarly stuff when they, they take drugs and they meditate and things.
I mean, this
Matthew, you're counter signaling white identity politics. Now you're counter signaling psychedelia.
I'm not counter signaling. I'm literally just asking Lev what does he personally
I know. I'm being a bastard.
I mean, as far as the
all right, you ready, Lev? You ready?
I think most things you see on psychedelics are a bunch of rubbish, even though they're fun. They're fun to see.
Oh my god.
No, they're just your brain regurgitating a bunch of stuff, and that's fine. That can be very humorous and very. It can appear to be deep as well.
But here's the big difference.
Often it's just your brain coughing itself.
All right,
up.
do the screen share for me.
Yes, here we go.
Okay.
The great reveal.
The nice clean edges.
Ooh.
Well, not so clean, but fuck. Damn it.
Fuck it.
Authentic edges, nonetheless.
Yes.
There you go. Oh,
whoa.
Oh, look at that.
Beautiful.
I'll take a picture of it and everything.
That's
Right now,
I
just have to let me.
And this
So
this can be all yours for minimum $112. So anybody who is interested in buying it, all you have to do is go to streamlabs.com/LevJules and send us the payment.
Streamlabs.
Yes.
I think Ethan Ralph should buy it. He's got $50,000.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah, that'd be amazing. I mean, he's got the money, right? I mean, well, not anymore because he managed to impregnate his child bride. So
that's true. That's going to child support.
So, Lev, other than the intuition of those shapes, as you were coming down from your trip, did you have any intuitions about either yourself or your relation to others and or nature during that trip?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it was like this whole thing of we are actually all one thing that's experiencing itself as different identities. But I do want to mention, though, Matthew, that these two images that I posted, these are not things that I saw during a psychedelic state. These are things that I see.
These are meditation.
Yeah,
things.
These are things that I see during a sober state. And when it comes to what meaning this holds for me, I don't see it as much as meaning as a mental framework. What I mean by that is it's something that seems to make sense for me as a framework for experiencing other visions, where out of that center, other shapes can be drawn, shapes can be combined with other shapes, and it seems to work really symmetrically as being kind of like a system that I've noticed other people also being able to see. So much like, for example, all of us can agree that when we wake up in the morning and look out, we're going to see a bright object in the sky, which is the sun. I think that there are certain systems that we are able to tap into that do have their own architecture. And this is architecture.
Yeah, this is an inner system. Yeah.
Exactly. So when
like memory castle.
Yeah. So when it comes to how certain shapes are generated, how you can, let's say, create even letters of the alphabet. Because my other experience during, let's say, a dream state was that you are able to create letters of the alphabet, or letters of the alphabet can be generated from, well, not alphabet, but just like Sanskrit or any kind of system that people use. Like any of these shapes, they can be created using the system. And a triangle can be created by just having 3 dots, one above, 2 below, or vice versa, that are around the center shape. So it is.
The reason I asked particularly is because I was just wondering, because DNA as a helix system is relatively new as a model, right? That's a newish discovery. Didn't James Watson who discovered that, or sequenced
Francis Crick.
Yeah. Francis Crick,
and James Watson.
Yes, and
but
James
I was
Watson.
just wondering.
But he's a racist, so we don't have to acknowledge him.
I believe it was
he'll be
Crick,
dead
though,
soon, so he's not worried about that.
I believe it was Crick, though, who actually saw the DNA helix.
Yes,
so,
the helix structure
after he
of
took
it.
LSD.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering, Lev, do you think that somebody who meditated, say, in the Vedantic era or something like that, would they have potentially seen this same structure? Is this some kind of thing, or would they have seen something that's in their own cultural frame?
I don't think it's really a cultural frame, though, because I think it's also a primordial frame of the human body as a representation of the universe.
By the way, look at that palette right there. Look at that dirty thing. Look at that.
Nice.
Yes, it's like you experience the universal form when you're on some sort of psychedelic. These are things that sort of transcend culture, if you will.
So take something like the caduceus, which is found in ancient Greek art, but it's also found in, let's say, the Kabbalistic tree of life. It's also found in, you could say, like in Hinduism, when it comes to the process of Kundalini, this snake-like energy that goes up the spine. And
reverse Kundalini.
Yeah, reverse Kundalini. You got to be careful with the butt stuff. Anyway, when it comes to all these ancient things, I personally do see a great similarity to what they're talking about, what they're depicting, having to do with the sacredness of the human body as a representation of the universe. And even this thing over here that I am seeing, it is in a way like these 2 eyes, for example, like these 2 circles, these are where my eyes are, and the third eye is over here. You could see the same, for example, with the shape of our face. Like another thing that I see is that our faces are also letters, if that makes sense. Our facial expressions, it's like all of this physiognomy, it's being generated out of like one spot, everything coming out of one spot, everything coming out of the third eye, like with perspective, right? Everything just comes out of this one spot, it's generated, and it's a symbol. Our faces are symbols. And you could even see it like with the nose, like these areas over here, just like I would have a vision of a triangle that's going down here. Same thing with the face. Same thing with the triangle over here. You know what I mean? Like all these things, they come out of this one spot and they create this pattern. You could even see it in the body, for example. I mean, you studied anatomy, so you could see certain things replicated.
Well, I've never had a deep meditative experience like this at all in a sober way, but I've done obviously tons of psychedelic things. But when you do things like DMT on a low dose, whatever, you do get a sense that everything is made up of a kind of. You get the sense that you understand, even though this may be completely fallacious. I don't know. Some people say these things are demonic, but when I do this low dose of DMT, there's a sense that you completely understand everything is made up of a structure and a system, and it's all so beautifully put together. And that's where the emotion, you get very struck by this powerful emotion that this is all put together for a reason. I mean, you can't pick it apart, but that's where you also feel somebody greater has put it together, but you can't do anything about that.
It's an intuitive feeling that I also found when I did psychedelics on the roof of the Russian-Turkish baths in New York City. There was this Hasidic Jewish kid who gave me some kosher weed, and the experience that I had
kosher
weed, yes, it's got to be kosher. The experience that I had there was when I looked at his face. He had like the yarmulke, he had like the those curly cues or whatever those things are called.
By the way, speaking of psychedelia, I think he's dead now. Phil, what's his name? Patrick Lumberg. But this book, one of the only books I know of that tries to talk about psychedelia through the lens of continental philosophy, specifically Husserl. I don't know if it's quite. I remember when I was in grad school, my one teacher, who happens to be a Jewish man himself, we were doing Kant. We were going through the Prolegomena, and he like looked. I was really big into the New Age shit, in psychedelia. So he like just looked at me dead square in the eye in front of the whole class. He's like, Gio, listen, you can't go to the numinal realm no matter how much LSD you do. And I'm like, oh my God, right? But
take it from somebody who knows. Take it from somebody who knows. An old Jewish guy. He's definitely tried very hard to go.
He's done.
Realm.
I'm
sure a lot of those rabbis. It does seem to me like when you get to the more esoteric element of any religion, they understand that a lot of these customs, that there are things beyond those customs that a lot of the same old bearded men would be able to agree on if they were to meet at a party or something.
Well, it's part of their it's part of the revolutionary spirit, if you know what I mean. So.
It's interesting when it comes to Judaism.
I'm kidding. I'm just kidding.
No, but there is something very interesting there. The idea of morality, the idea of, let's say, converting egoism into altruism to do something that would be considered to be a moral thing, where I think a lot of the bleeding heart liberals, that may be where it comes from, but it comes from in such an egoistic way, in such a fake way. Like, it's almost like they're lying to themselves, where they say like, oh my God, like, we got to let all the immigrants in. Oh my God, it's a very egotistical inversion of what that principle is, truly, I think. But anyway. But the thing with the faces...
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, then I have a good point.
Okay.
Not a better point. Sorry, I didn't mean better.
No, okay, here we go. Okay.
Bullshit,
so with the faces, what I noticed that when I was on this kosher joint high, I looked at his face, and I looked at the faces of the other people around me. And I just started to be very kind of it's like I'm looking at the faces for the first time. And when I'm noticing these faces, I'm just so amazed by the fact, like, here we have this thing that moves around and it conveys your soul. Like this thing that's like, it's not just the static body, and it's not like the body of an animal where the animal's face is more or less solid, you know what I mean? Like, it's more or less fixed into a certain form, and it may be a beautiful form itself. It's like fixed into it. These are faces that are conveying the inside of a person by the way that they're shaped and the way that they move around. And it's almost like somebody put them there. Somebody slapped these faces
like the
on.
Alex Gray heads.
Almost, but it's like the Alex Gray heads, they all look the same. All of our faces
all
look different.
I guess that's why I'm particularly drawn to doing portraiture, and that's kind of my default mode of art. Even though I'd like to take it in places where it's not really at the moment. I'm very much focused, like you said, on the face itself and on conveying emotion through that. I feel like if you can manage to get somebody, if you manage to capture somebody's emotion, then the art's already a success. You don't really necessarily even need much else. Charles hair made up of.
Wait, who is that? Is that Vin Diesel?
Isn't that the fellow from $1 Million Extreme?
Oh yeah, that's Charles. Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't recognize him because he's bald. And by the way,
that was from the clip. What was it called? They
Where
wanted
he goes
me
to
be
jail.
Yeah. But it had a funny name to it. The man who didn't want to be what they wanted him to be, or something like that. Yeah.
I don't remember that one, but the one that I remember really well is the wine party. I could have sworn the first time that I saw this, the wife of the wine party over here, of Sam Hyde, she looked so much like that princess from Game of Thrones. You know who I'm talking about? That redheaded actress who was not Arya Stark, but the other one.
The
older sister.
Yeah.
Sophie. Sophie's her first name. The actress.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Well, doesn't she have a Sansa Stark vibe?
She does.
Girl boss. Yeah, she got the girl boss going.
And the guy was named Sam's brother.
They did an updated version that in my opinion is even better.
Yes,
yeah,
the wine,
where it's
the
like
wine
the crack
tasting.
whore. Yeah.
Oh man, that was pretty brutal.
Sophie Turner, that's her name apparently.
Interesting, Sophie Turner.
Yeah, you notice how they're always pushing, women that have what did Sane Meme call it? Like the Anglo face that she would be like on child number 4 right now. It's like they're pushing like Arya Stark, like that actress. What's her name? she's a lesbian now. Massey Williams, is that her name?
Oh.
They're pushing that ugly fucking crone from what's her name from Handmaid's Tale. She's in every movie now. Every movie.
Elizabeth Moss.
Yes.
Elizabeth Moss.
Elizabeth
yeah.
Moss. Oh God.
Yeah, they gotta push her. Like,
I feel grateful
like
I've never seen any of these goddamn things. I don't fucking know what these people are. I'm
Thank
sorry.
God, eh, Matt?
I know who
Thank
Maisie
God.
Williams is vaguely.
But like they gotta push that sort of like they have to make. I guess it's not. But here's the thing: it's like an older like it's older than people think. Like, for example, they made like Janis Joplin into like a sex symbol, like an unconventional woman who you wouldn't see as like a glamour model, which I think there's a place for that. Like, I think that even in meme culture, we're starting to see that with like
well, you have loads of unconventional beauties in meme culture. You got
exactly. Like
Ventes.
Well, even like the OnlyFans thing is another. Not to go, but like my point to connect to what the purpose of today's show is to with like the psychedelic thing is I think I like to I always say like there's so much shit I have to write about, but one of them that me and Matthew we discussed for many years would be what I like to call psychedelic kitsch. Like a lot of these artists are very talented and they have like a lot of artistic output, but unfortunately they tend to be like Alex Gray, Martina Hoffman, Robert Venosa clones. A lot of digital artists as well. And so I'm thinking like the problem with a lot of psychedelic culture is that a lot of this art isn't like exactly transgressive or even interesting anymore. Like, for example, the dark side, the B side of psychedelia would be like H.R. Geiger or Bitskinski or someone like that. Like, I don't even... I guess like a contemporary example would be that Maruz guy from Poland, but yet a lot of people think he's just like a like a metal album cover like knockoff of Bitskinski, right?
It's interesting. It's interesting, Joe, that we're still somewhat trapped by the paradigms that were established in the 70s. You know, because people would look at Geiger. This is art from the 70s.
Yeah, but it's been given new life now. Because people,
it's a testament to just how visionary Geiger really was that his art still has resonance today, obviously. But it's interesting that we haven't really managed to move past. Particularly, again, we're still trapped in this kind of stasis of capitalist realism, where you're just kind of recycling old forms again and again and again. Even the psychedelic forms that they emerged in the 60s, really, with the advent of like LSD and stuff.
Well, look at all
even
the
those
movies.
forms are recycled.
Like, look at all the movies that are coming out right now. Everything is like a copy of a copy of a copy. So it's understandable that even in the high art, they would be recycling things that have already been created.
I think even the normies. I think that even the normies like understand that things are just a copy of a copy of a copy these days.
Oh yeah.
But then nobody can still manage to like move past it, and even expressing this is kind of redundant in a lot of ways. Even though it's good to kind of reaffirm that we all understand this, but is there a real way out?
Well,
is there something you could
my dad's
make?
artwork, I think that's a way out. I mean, I'm learning from my dad. I'm learning from Gio. I'm learning from all these people. Like, I want to start getting back into art as soon as possible, as soon as I end up freeing up a lot of the schedule here that I have. I just have to do a lot of things in advance. But here is an example that I'm loading up right now of artwork that my dad created with this wolf and the hammer and sickle. So stuff like this, I am very much into. You have Don Quixote over here in the background, and this is something that I just think like it's true masterwork. And same thing with this
beautiful
Coney Island painting. For anybody who's interested, it's alpstudio.com. I'm going to be starting a website for Gio and for my dad soon where you guys could buy their work. And this is another example over here of the painting. And I really look up to my dad. Like, I think that he is a genius, and he's also the person who did the cover for this painting back in 1987. I mean, for this stream back in 1987. It was Esmeralda with her beautiful crystalline goat. And you could find his work at alpstudio.com. Here, I'll have a link for you guys. But I'm not that satisfied with a lot of the psychedelic stuff that I see, even honestly, like from Alex Gray. I see him less of an artist and more of a messenger. Like he's somebody who goes into these worlds probably and sees something and relays it. But I don't really think it could be properly relayed unless you see the thing itself. And I think as artists, we can't just grab something from the psychedelic realm and just slap it onto this world and say, here you go, it's done.
But,
I hate to say
this
it.
is where. Sorry, this is
I
where
hate to say it, but there's
like,
a certain
sorry, Jay.
marketability now to Alex Gray that unfortunately lends itself to repetitive work. I hate to say it, but like, sorry, Matthew, go ahead.
No, sorry. But as you were saying, like, I suppose when you have digital involved as well, that it becomes quite easy to do a knockoff of Alex Gray. It becomes easy to do a knockoff of anyone, really. But
I don't know.
In terms of actually finding your own voice, though, I think that's probably the way everybody has to go. But not just owing it to someone else. Like being influenced by your dad is wonderful, but it's got to be an eclectic kind of influence from other people as well. It's got to come from all sorts of sources, because everybody's very much, we're all kind of immersed in like all culture from every era now. Everybody, you can kind of pluck things out from every era, but that leads to people with a lot of paralysis and confusion as well.
Definitely, and we have a comment actually. Speaking of that, from Jacob Lindsay. Do you think a lot of the issues with psychedelic art is that it has a digital component that takes something away? That's a good question. I mean, when it comes to Alex
I don't
Gray,
think digital intrinsically ruins the nature of it being psychedelic art at all. I don't think that's the case. But
well, let me show you an example of my work. I don't really share my work that much, partly because it actually this is a GIF that I have to actually figure out how to save properly, but I'm going to show it eventually. But I don't know exactly if I'm influenced fully by my dad's stuff. I think it's kind of like I'm influenced by a lot of my stuff that I did over the years. Like I started drawing back when I was like 11 years old. I started doing these very detailed pieces, which is based on Bruegel, talking about him again, and Salvador Dali and people like that. Like I like a lot of this surrealistic kind of stuff. Like Matthew, who would you say are your biggest influences? If you can point a finger at it.
Obviously Klimt, Gustav Klimt, and probably Millet as well, John Everett Millet, famous pre-Raphaelite painter. And Geiger as well. Geiger was a very early influence of mine. I used to draw Geiger aliens all the time. My father gave me H.R. Geiger's film design book, but he censored several of the pages of it because they were too raunchy for a 10-year-old to look at, obviously.
Like the one with
the monster from Species.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that as well. But I mean, and obviously I'm influenced by fantasy art as well. I think fantasy art is something that's not really discussed and picked apart in interesting ways in distant right circles, when it has a lot. Again, it owes a lot to the 70s. I mean, the real sort of fantasy art, I think you can really attribute to Frank Frazetta.
Yeah,
Frank
absolutely.
Frazetta was a massive influence of mine as well. I had, especially when you're 16 or 15 years old and you're horny and somewhat, you enjoy the look of a woman's body. Frank Frazetta is wonderful. But yeah, I think it's a sense of vision and heroism that Frazetta managed to, because he lived, I think, if not, he lived a heroic life in the sense that he heroically dove into his art, and he, I suppose, was almost like a character in his own story in that way, like one of these barbarians who, against all odds, managed to create his own sort of empire.
And we have Keith Parkinson, who did a lot of Dungeons, or most of the Dungeons and Dragons artwork as well. I love fantasy art.
By the way, I managed to find it. So this is a piece that I did called Electric Elf. Let's see if it loads over here properly. So here we go. So you can
I don't know. I think fantasy art's kind of sus, in my opinion.
What do you mean?
Man, I love Moebius, Jean Girard, for fantasy art as well.
Oh, well, that's,
so, I mean,
but see, that, to me, that transcends fantasy art, because that's like, I don't know, a lot of like contemporary.
Well, that's visionary psychedelic art. Moebius.
Right?
I say Moebius definitely owes a lot to psychedelia as well, that people don't really maybe give him credit for.
And also some of the Japanese artists, like the guy who did the Final Fantasy artwork. I don't
Amano.
remember.
Oh yes,
Amano.
Yoshitaka Amano. He's
really
phenomenal. But he's deeply indebted to Klimt as well. In his.
Yep. And so, Matthew, I totally agree with you regarding Moebius about how he's definitely influenced by psychedelia. What I really love and appreciate about him, however, is that when you look at the work, it's not obviously psychedelic work like in the case of Alex Gray, which is not to demean Alex Gray. I like that, but like there is that sort of Kish psychedelia. Oh, you've done mushrooms in some of that work. Whereas when you look at Mobius, it's just it lives.
It's
in
sideways thinking. It's thinking from a different way, you know, and that's what really the psychedelic mind should be about. It shouldn't be about these tired cliches of, you know, the same old, you know, visions that we've all seen dozens of times. Psychedelia is about thinking in ways which are sideways and upside down and strange, and sometimes can be darkly, disturbingly strange, and sometimes can be very humorous. And that's what Mobius, I think, has in his work as well. Like there's a humor to it. Some of the Dune. I was looking at some of the Dune concept art he did, and you know, if this film had been made, it would have been just a completely absurd film. It would have been ridiculous, but also amazing at the same time. And that's why I don't think it could ever have been made, because I don't think people's brains really were able to wrap their head around what this film would even have been. You know, you had Geiger involved in that as well, and you had Mobius, and you had, you know, I think, a couple of other famous 70s.
Oh, you
fantasy.
had the Dali.
Yes, you had Dali, who was supposedly being paid
Welles.
obscene amounts of money to work on this film, which was never obviously going to happen.
Mick Jagger as one of the characters.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's pretty
right.
crazy.
Yeah.
His own son was going to be in it too, if I recall.
But I think we look back on this documentary about this Dune film that never happened and think that, you know, it seems so rich and so wonderful today because nowadays maybe people's visions are so stunted and so trapped by perhaps the limitations of, is this going to be saleable? Is this going to be consumable to the widest possible audience? Not you know, globally. This is ethnically, globally. Everybody has to enjoy this. You know, are we catering to the Chinese? You know, all this sort of stuff. And that's why I think these mainstream productions, they don't really have anything to offer in terms of genuinely moving like creativity forward.
Well, except for it's all the soundtrack in a lot of Cape Shit movies, for instance. It's entirely just that moving sort of like the epic hero, like it's all bullshit. It's fucking candy for the mind in a lot of ways.
Although the good soundtrack was from the original Batman trilogy with Danny Elfman. Like that one at least had some staple of creativity in it. That I don't know, or even like that scene with the gorilla. You remember that scene with those gorillas in the suits with Poison Ivy and Batman and Robin? That one was.
Don't try and rehabilitate Batman and Robin, please. I mean, I know people on 4chan try and say, "Oh, this was a piece of genius, kitsch, underrated classic Batman and Robin." No, this was trash. But I mean, it's so easy to complain, unfortunately, these days about, you know, the desert of genuine creativity. But I do think we have to go back to things like Mobius and Geiger and really analyze maybe what made them wonderful, rather than just thinking, oh, we can never recreate something like this so visionary ever again. I think it begins with believing that you actually can make something like that and just striving with it, really.
I don't know, though. Look at this gorilla suit. I mean, just look at its eyes. Look at its expression. It's a very beautiful-looking ape creature. You know, we talk about Return to Monkey. Well, this is the kind of monkey that, you know, we could possibly return to, a psychedelic. You
wouldn't want to see that on. You wouldn't want to see that on 5 grams of dried mushrooms, would you?
Certainly not.
5 grams
imagine going to a furry convention wearing this thing. Like, I would love to. In fact, I think on the 7th. We are going to have a furry live stream. So
it had to happen eventually.
Yes,
Did you say on October 7th?
I believe so. Yeah, I'm looking at.
You're gonna do that on my birthday. That's amazing.
Yes, happy birthday. Yes. wait. No, because that's a Wednesday, so it's after your birthday. It's going to be on October 8th, Thursday, October 8th. That's the furry. Now
belated birthday present.
Yeah, belated birthday present. Happy birthday. Now, what we are going to have.
You should get Pamper Chew on the stream.
Pamper
Chew. Is that a baby fur?
Oh God.
Don't
Is that
Google
a diaper person?
Don't Google.
Pamper Chew. Let's see what Pamper Chew is all about.
Do not Google.
I'm gonna Google. I'm gonna find out.
Do not research.
Do not research. That's it.
Oh man, I mean, yeah, I get it. The diaper stuff. But
I'll probably get a lot of hate for this from like the chat and maybe some more like traditional people, but I think that there's something to be said for a lot of like tattoo art. For instance, there's this tattooer, Gregoltron is what he goes by, and he does some really like wild style, like Mobius looking stuff. Maybe not necessarily like, well, on his tattoos as well, but a lot of like the paintings he does. And like Grime is another one who does really crazy stuff like that. So I think some of that stuff exists in like some people who are around, especially tattoo wise, like the late 90s. Are still keeping that.
I do think you're right, Joyce, in that tattoo artists have tremendous skill, a lot of them, but it seems like it's always going to be relegated to its own kind of,
subculture.
It's not really considered to be a serious art form. So I mean, I don't know why exactly. I'm not so sure, but I mean, I've been to tattoo. I used to want to be a tattoo artist, and I went to a few tattoo conventions when I was, a teenager. And I luckily only got one tattoo. I would have definitely regretted it if I'd got more. But it is interesting how I think that was a big fad in what was it, 2007, 2008, that everybody was normies were all kind of obsessed with getting tattoos, and there were lots of very big sort of tattoo publications, and everyone was kind of mad on it. And then that craze kind of died out. You don't really see like Zoomers kind of interested in getting tattoos these days, do you?
I thought that what was it? I thought like this like totally dates me to that era. One time on Twitter, I think it was Versalaloon who pointed this out, where I'm like, well, fucking watercolor tattoos were a thing. And he's like, no, Gio, that's like totally millennial. Zoomers are into a fucking like poorly drawn tattoos that you do yourself. Like that's what Zoomers are into. I don't know if that's true.
One of my favorite.
Yeah, and I don't like I don't necessarily think because I come from like a kind of like old school like outlaw tradition of like tattooing, and I don't consider it like exactly art either. I think it is its own like art form. They are like tattoo art, but I'm talking more of like the paintings that some of these guys are doing, especially guys that do like traditional Japanese stuff too, like.
They're hugely skilled.
Like
they're very skilled draftsmen, a lot of them.
I'm trying to find a good example on Gregoltron's Instagram right now. I'll post it in the Break the Rules chat so you guys can see in a second.
Example. Right over here we have these girls.
Oh, that one. Oh my god.
I love the Bobby Hill tattoo. I don't know if you could see it over here, but this gal, she looks. I will once. That
would be a good painting for you, Gio. That would be a good subject.
Oh yeah, there you go. That's a good subject.
I mean, she looks.
I could definitely see that selling for.
I think I actually have it saved in a file somewhere to like future painting or whatever.
She looks like Bobby Hill.
Oh my god,
there's Bobby Hill.
Oh man, cheese curdle thigh.
Yeah, I want to see the gorilla to clean my. In the palette, the visual palette. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, thank you.
You're gonna see the gorilla next time you meditate. The gorilla is coming for you.
See the gorilla.
Yeah, but there was still something I think to Joel Schumacher, to approve such a design for a gorilla. Like I don't know. I'm just obsessed with this fucking gorilla. I don't know. There's just something about it.
The man had boldness.
Something about him.
That.
Yeah, it's what it is. I think it's the fact that Schumacher. He was so obsessed with putting abs and like muscles on everything that he put the abs on the gorilla too.
Do you remember
magnificent physique?
But it wasn't really even about the abs. It was more about the nipples on the bat suit. It was about the bat nipples. That's right.
But wasn't it something?
That's right.
Wasn't it inspired by the ancient, ancient Greek
like
armor?
The cuirasses or whatever they had. Yeah.
Like even in the Met, I believe you can go there and you could see a suit of armor that is, like a muscular body, like muscular abdomen and chest, everything, and the nipples. The nipples are part of this armor. So he may be actually truer to the idea of a superhero warrior than other cape shit people, because he went back to the Spartans. That's where he got his inspiration for the suit of armor. So
which Batman was this?
This is Batman and Robin.
No, Batman and Robin was number 2, but yes, it was Batman. Batman Forever.
Schumacher.
Batman Forever, yeah.
He did too.
But Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer.
Well, Val Kilmer was number 1.
Oh, that was the Val Kilmer. Didn't that one bomb or something like that?
Everyone hated it, but it's the best Batman. Trust me.
Well, you guys are getting it wrong. You guys are getting it wrong. So first, it was Val Kilmer. That was Batman Forever. Then it was Batman and Robin. That's the one that bombed, and that was George Clooney, fresh off of his
CPR.
Okay.
Yes.
Fuck George Clooney.
So here.
Fucking George. Val
Yeah,
Kilmer
there's
used to
those
be-
Wow.
paintings I was talking
is
about.
beautiful.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
Let's take a look.
Yeah, that's definitely skilled.
Wow. And look at
Yeah,
this.
like that paint, like that's shit, like it's insane. Like you can look at it 100 times, you're gonna see something like new to like be like, what the like it's wild.
That looks like a Gundam robot in a way. It looks like a.
And then that cap, though, yeah, the kappa like bent back, and then the other one, the first one that
Yeah.
I posted.
Wow. And this is the bat nipples over here. So
Now
if
for
you,
something
God.
completely different.
so
And we have the one that got away, which is the Nicolas Cage Batman Lives. Oh, sorry, that's Superman. Superman Lives. That
yeah.
was something that
Can you
should have
imagine Nick
happened.
Cage as Superman after
There's
he did that?
pictures of it in the suit, and it was supposed to be
Yeah.
what's his name? The guy that did Jay and Silent Bob. He was supposed to
Kevin
wrote
Smith.
it.
Oh, Kevin Smith. Yeah.
Kevin Smith wrote it, yeah.
Well, here I found the Spartan equivalent. So I mean, you guys judge for yourself. But I think this
Oh
is
yeah,
pretty
with
much
the
it.
nipples on the breastplate.
Yes.
The
Why can't
magnificent physiques.
Why
Hmm?
can't it load? What is going on? I don't understand. What is? Hold on. Here, I'm gonna do it. I'm
It's
gonna
too powerful.
Oh, here we go.
There
Here
we
it is.
go.
There we
Okay.
go.
Yes.
Hey,
So
that's
if you
cool.
compare the bat nipples to this, I mean, it might as well be the same thing. It might as well be
Pretty
the
much,
same
yeah.
thing. So I don't see all this
Well,
flack that people are
It's,
giving.
it's better than in
Schumacher.
300 when they sprayed their abs on with the airbrush. You know?
Oh God, I forgot about that. But yeah, I mean,
It was like the Renaissance painters, especially the Flemish Renaissance. They had a lot of fun painting armor. That was like their thing. Like Van Eyck like really loved to paint armor, and then later like the English aesthetic painters they did like that. You know, like what was the one? Was it Burne Jones or was it Waterhouse that did the one where it was like the knight with like the maiden in the forest? Was that? Oh
Well,
man, there was a few.
Waterhouse did loads of those, but Burne Jones was famous for actually having his own suits of armor made for.
Yeah, that's
he had them
right,
made
yeah.
out of like tin or something, and it's because he wanted a very particular look for this sort of dark medieval. I think it was for the Sleeping Beauty series of paintings. He got special armor made. Anyway, I think I'm going to head off now, fellas. If that's all right, I'm going to have something to eat.
That is perfectly all right. And in
Yeah.
fact, I think we could probably end it kind of right now, pretty much.
Yeah, tonight's
I
the
think.
debate, so people are
Yes,
gonna look at
exactly.
that.
Oh
so.
God! Oh God!
Yeah.
Massacre.
Gird your
Yes.
loins.
Are they going to be
Gird
meeting?
your loins.
Are they going to be meeting
Two
live?
old men on drugs.
It's not on
Two
Zoom.
old
They're
men on
actually
drugs.
Elder abuse. The elder abuse.
Oh, God.
hour.
Elder abuse, man.
See, instead
It's
of
fun.
instead of having the instead of
It's gonna be
having
fucking awkward. I love
They
it.
should have Frank Hassel as the moderator.
yes,
Oh my god.
Would watch.
it's like people
I'm
used to
so
like,
robbed now.
like in ancient Rome, people used to have the Colosseum, you know, like all those fights. They used to bring the animals in. How is this any different? You know, we're subjecting.
it's not. It's like
Yeah.
the Hunger Games.
Exactly.
How about instead of like final? How about our final thought? Like, 'cause
Yes.
we'll probably do another aesthetic stream, but let's do like the debate predictions. Let's do that.
Okay.
So, Matthew, you go first because you.
No,
gotta go.
let go first. Let go first.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I don't really have much to say. I think Biden's probably not going to do as bad as people may think. I think they've got
I
him
agree.
hopped up on something pretty powerful. Like, they strategize, they save the date. Okay, now's the debate day. We're just going to pump you up full of the shit, and then you're going to be like Superman on stage. Or
They probably
relative-
fed him the questions too. Let's face it.
Yes.
You know.
Yes, but I don't know. I expect it's going to be maybe average. There may be some funny quips that would occur. So, Jacob says maybe they should have to put on nipple armor before the debate. That was
So dishonest.
and Randy Lenz says Biden will be wearing Depends tonight.
Oh, well, he has to. Yeah.
Yes, I have it on
I don't
good
know.
authority.
I think like if Trump, if he digs down deep enough, he has to like really. I think in some ways it might be even more brutal. Like if they really go to the old like campaign Trump, because like the thing is he had to like hold back at least a little bit of a degree with Hillary because she was a woman. But I think that now that Biden is equally like an old geriatric, he's just gonna have to like pummel him in order to get like absolute like it's got to be a squash match. Put it that way. It's got to be like election campaign Trump. It's got to be like fucking Like when Brock Lesnar fought Zach Gowen, if people remember that, it's got to be like that level of squash match.
Which one of them do you think is going to speak Spanish first?
I think Biden will give Spanish a very, very poor attempt.
Yeah.
Oh God.
It's funny because I remember the one stream, I wasn't paying attention, but even Lev said, when Trump said we have some bad hombres, I was like in 2015. And then Lev's like, yeah, these bad hombres coming. Like, I just remember when Trump like lit up that journalist, he was like, we got some very bad hombres coming over. Like shit like that's gotta be like a nasty woman, so dishonest. Like he's gotta really like hem up the comedic value of Trump. Like he's gotta go right for like Sleepy Joe, Diddler, I don't know.
Heroes and big orange gorilla bully senile old man on live TV. He has to go gorilla mode. That's
gonna go gorilla mode. Are you saying, Gio, he should just straight up call him a paedophile? Is that the level of discourse? Is that the level of discourse we're at these days? Like, this man is definitely touched children in the past. That would be great, honestly, if they just call each other paedophiles for 40 minutes. I'd really enjoy that. That's my prediction. That's my prediction. They're both going to call each other paedophiles.
I was thinking rape, at least rapists, because they both have their rape accusations against each other.
Yeah,
they're
going to throw rape accusations.
Squash match.
You raped
her. Like that photo, someone should put it in the Discord. Like that photo where Biden's kissing his 19 years old, 18 years old. Like kissing his granddaughter, like the way, like there's something going on there because like the way she unconsciously like gave that like subtle riling up of her skirt, like that's
whoa, steady now.
Shit. Yeah, that's I know it's really uncomfortable, and
I think Biden is definitely going to accuse Trump of having massacred 200,000 or 2 million dead from COVID or whatever he says. Yeah. He's gonna say you killed like half the country, basically.
Yeah, like we said. He'll say
he's probably going to lead with that. He's probably going to come out for swinging with that.
Yeah,
honestly.
like COVID killed 6 million.
Yeah. Remember.
Why did I say that? What is the fucking alt-right memes? They never die. They never.
It's a little ultra based there, Gio.
Yeah, so he's gonna come out the gate with like like what's a Bidenism? He says
Malarkey.
like that's a lot. Yeah, something like that. But so 6 grillion people died of COVID. Yeah, I don't know.
He's probably going to trying to rinse him about his tax thing as well, which is just a complete redundant non-issue.
That's going to be so boring and stupid. It's going to happen. You're right, though, for sure, because it just happened.
Because it's hot on the media's lips at the moment,
That's my prediction for the debates: is largely boring, punctuated with maybe 1 or 2 good moments.
Yeah. Well, that's what that's what the 2016 ones were like, really, weren't they? They were largely boring.
Well, the good thing about making that kind of prediction is that if you're wrong, then you're going to be much happier than if it was the other way around.
Well, most people on poll, Lev, think that Trump's going to literally come out and like punch him in the face and like throw him across the stage.
Was that what the
like physically assault him? That would be cool.
Yeah.
I would love that because then
Trump's going to come up to him and rip his earpiece out and just throw it on the ground and stand there.
Trump comes out with a gladius and just swipes into him.
That was like this total
WWE style.
Yeah. He's gonna give him a stunner. The one shit post I remember from back in 2016 from Paul, me and my best friend Josh, we can never stop saying this, was it was, if you look for it, it's called God Emperor Trump, where he says like Trump is going to like, he's going to insult people, and then like the KKK and the and like the SS stormtroopers are going to come through the door. They're going to erect a gallows. They're going to lynch Ben Carson, and then Trump is going to ascend to the heavens with his like mecha armor suit. He's going to become the God Emperor. And then then Hillary Clinton is gonna like dematerialize into ash like some fucking Blade vampire. So, yeah.
On the for real, I do think it's interesting that there is so much less Wignat enthusiasm about Trump these days, but I think there is actually a lot more like normal people enthusiasm about him, which the Wignats don't really tend to think about, and they don't really consider that much, and which means maybe they'll be disappointed with just how many normal people actually end up voting for the guy.
But do you think it's because of the riots though? Like normal people see that and they're like, "Oh fuck, we don't want."
But how is this
global Detroit?
Well, normal people just like him. I think normal people honestly just like the guy. I think they find him endearing and actually someone they can relate to in some way, even if he is a relentless capitalist and a dickhead or whatever.
I still don't understand the strategy though, as far as like, and I can understand that Antifa would be funded by different entities and whatever, and it would sow chaos. But for those who are actually on the side of thinking like, hey, this is something that just might work to, I don't know, like, there is nothing about this movement whatsoever that has been appealing for the normies. So what was the point? I don't understand.
Lev, you don't understand. George Soros is fucking behind it, man. Just George Soros. just that.
Yeah, but then is George Soros, is he just like at this point because it doesn't make any sense? It really doesn't.
George Soros is literally dribbling. He's actually dribbling at this point. He can't hold his lips together.
Dribbling.
He's like Henry
that feeble.
Wow.
Yeah, he's Kissinger mode.
Yeah, I remember when Luke Rudowski confronted from We Are Change, he burst into this event. He confronted Henry Kissinger, and Kissinger was just food all over himself. Like he can't do anything. He's like, "Get out of here, you twerp! Get out of here!" He called him a twerp. Here's the thing: a lot of these foundations, they don't have to they don't have to have someone at the helm. Literally, that one rich guy I remember. He's a Scientologist. He was
Tom Cruise?
No. It's this rich grifter that sells people financial advice that YouTuber Philemon was taking down. He's all this stuff around me, all my organizations, my charity foundation, literally I could die tomorrow and nothing would change because that's how solid these.
Well, I'm sure that's how the Open Society Foundation pretty much operates exactly like that. I think people just use Soros as just a figurehead representing point. Just because he looks gnarly, because he's a 90-year-old man.
It's because he's Jewish. But
that is true. You can't say that, Joe. Right, we've got to stop the stream now. This is going too far.
I think here's the thing. I think normies, they don't really shut it down. They don't really care that he's Jewish. I think it's just a Vox salon New Yorker talking point to say that it's a journalist talking point to say.
When has George Soros ever talked
When has he ever worn a yarmulke?
No.
He's the most I don't give a shit about being a Jew I've ever seen.
Well,
I think some Paul-tards probably hate him because he's a Jew, but that's beside. That's not.
I mean, look, Jules.
The average person that hates Soros, it's not because he's a Jew. It's because he funds
that's true.
Antifa or whatever.
I mean, Jules
and
does
he
not
funds literal revolutions.
Jules doesn't like this.
Revolutions.
Jules is not a fan of this argument when people talk about George Soros during the Holocaust, he was going around to Jewish buildings and he was what was it he was.
He was repossessing.
Liquidate their assets.
Yes, exactly.
But this was with his uncle. This was, people have this idea that he went around and actually did it personally. No, he was under the protection of his uncle.
He admitted to it in his 60 Minutes interview in '94, where he's
he had to pretend that he wasn't. He had to pretend he was a Christian while doing this as well. It was just purely Machiavellian survival tactics. This wasn't, anything to do.
Yeah, but he said it was the most foundational period of his life, though.
He said that he had.
Could Alex Jones be wrong? He's never wrong.
But I guess at that age, though, if you're 14 years old and you say, you had great fun doing this kind of stuff, I'm not sure if your whole political compass was, grown to that point for you to be able to have a concrete opinion on something like what was going on at that time. So I don't know, I'm not going to use that.
But I don't even think you need to be a Nazi to, the whole thing that Soros was a Nazi to me is irrelevant, in my opinion.
Well, that's a Dinesh D'Souza tier fucking argument, isn't it?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that. No, the personality trait that signifies is maybe a mild level of sort of lack of
Machiavellianism,
and sociopathy. So people describe Soros as just having no empathy, no care for what he actually does, what the impact of his actions do. And he openly says this in interviews. He says, "I can't. How can I afford to care about this? Because my job is making money, and if that means that a third world country collapses." doesn't matter. You know, my foundation and my what was it? His quantum fund or whatever he had. The role of that was to earn billions of dollars, and you know that was his. He says, "I can't afford to think about the impact of that."
But
Maybe
then
that
at the
makes him
same
evil, I
time,
don't know, probably does.
but then at the same time, like the leftist journalists, like the Redditors, they have to like downplay his influence on contemporary politics. They have to say that, like,
that is true.
like
He's
if
just a
you're
harmless
still
nothing
like in
man.
2020, if you're still talking about the Koch brothers, I'm sorry, you're fucked up. Like you're beyond hope. You're beyond saving because the Koch brothers. They have
This
no,
guy has money. Like Soros has money that he can move the political needle in country.
Yeah.
He can destabilize. He genuinely can and does destabilize countries. I think that's why people hate him.
Yeah. Well, same with that guy that the British, like he shorted the British currency. What was his name?
That was George Soros.
Was it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry. Yeah.
No, but you know,
Didn't Nostradamus predict
own...
him? He said that eventually someone was going to destroy the British pound.
Yeah. Well, there is that conspiracy theory about the Rothschilds with the Bank of England, and I do have to look up what exactly happened during the Napoleonic time. Was there anybody...
They had a guy, they had a courier that was more that was faster than the British Army courier, and he and basically was it Nathan de Rothschild that he like told them that the British lost at Waterloo, but really they won. And so then they lost. So then they knew that Britain was totally fucked. They were going to get taken over. And then they basically bought up all of the like rapid fire sale British assets for pennies on the dollar. And by the time the real courier came and said that they won against Napoleon, then all of the British assets, all of the stocks like skyrocketed, and they
so that's market manipulation basically, which is what people accuse Soros of doing, because he has enough money that he can effectively, you know, ruin a country, destabilize a country, and then buy up that country's currency, because he's a forex trader basically. Soros, he trades in different currencies, and if a currency is devalued, it means he gets to buy up really cheap, and then or short
inflate it.
But if he gets to make that currency crash with his own money, then you know that's obviously market manipulation on a massive sort of scale. But what can you do? You know, you can ban him, like Hungary. Hungary actually said we ban this man.
Well, with Soros, there is something that we can actually look up and find out. When it comes to the Rothschild thing, what I don't know is how much evidence do we have that all this stuff that they're talking about happened. And I'm not one to, you know, say like, oh, this never happened, this could never happen. Of course this can happen, but I really just want to get like, what is the closest we can get to this actually going on, where it's not just hearsay.
Well, I suppose in 500 years or whatever, there'll be as much mythology around Soros as there is now around the Rothschilds, right?
Probably,
you know.
Yeah, I mean,
the Rothschilds like to self-mythologize, as far as I know. They like to kind of self-aggrandize their own importance in world history, right?
If there is any white pills that I would be able to offer in the next couple of months, I want to compile a list of conspiracies, actual conspiracies that were attempted but never got to come into fruition. Because Aman, one of our great patrons, Aman Sadhu, was saying over here, strategy doesn't make sense to us, but maybe they had something else that was supposed to meet with it, talking about the riots that were going on, supposed to meet with it, and timing messed up or something. So I think that we have this idea that everything is like under control by these elites, but I wonder if you look back at history, how many times those same elites tried to do the equivalent of Agenda 21 or any of these things, and it just fell on their fucking asses. We can't discredit that idea as well, that it's not just a one...
Look, I'm kind of inclined to take the Terence McKenna attack on this, where...
There's no conspiracy, that's the real conspiracy?
You really people want so bit. Obviously, people are going to say, "Oh, you're denying conspiracies," but it is more a case of just kind of chaos and opportunism. Really, I think people just take whatever opportunity they can have, and it's if you study someone like Soros, you think he basically makes bets about world events that can happen or not, and he's wrong as well. Is that people forget that Soros has often been wrong, but one thing he actually said, is a famous quote from him, is, I make sure that when I'm wrong, it doesn't matter as much as when I'm right. When I'm right, it matters a lot, you know. But when I'm wrong, it's only a minor thing. So
Mm,
you
he
only
hedges his
hear
bets.
about the times he's right. You know, if he'd lost a bet against the pound or whatever, then you wouldn't really hear about that. But he earned what $1.7 billion off that. So, you know, and then he gets an infamous reputation around the world as people get scared of him, and the very mention of his name is like, oh, our country's going to be fucked now.
Mm.
But he has a vision for the world, so he actually has like principles that are really kind of, they're pretty internal, like they're kind of singular
Karl
to
Popper,
his.
Open Society.
Yeah, based on
Yeah.
Open Society. But again,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Popper would necessarily approve of his particular undertakings.
He's not a great philosopher, Soros. He's not like a particularly, if you listen to him talking like lectures, he's not like what you'd call like a genius, but he is a genius in his own field. You know, in what he does is trading currencies, basically.
Finance, finance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not even finance overall. He's just a genius in like macro finance and just like world events. Anyway.
By the way, regarding the thing that was put up here, Putin issues, I know it was you, Buff. Putin issues international arrest warrant for George Soros, dead of alive.
Jeez. Why do you hate this man? Why do you hate this man?
I would copy the line from.
There's got to be an alliance between America and Russia in the coming decades.
Gio,
that's the only thing that's gonna happen.
You gotta move to Russia for a couple of months. I'll get you a room there, then we'll see. We'll see what you think. But it reminds me
you would not enjoy that.
It reminds me of the line from Dick Tracy: "The enemy of my enemy is my enemy." So anyway.
Oh God.
With that,
I think that's a good line to see us out on.
End the stream on.
Oh, with that being said, take care, guys. Jugs, Hermes, Gio, Matthew. Thank you so much, guys, for being here. This was amazing as always.
God save the Queen.
Yeah, God save the Queen.
Yes.
And
thanks, everybody.
On Thursday, we're gonna have a libertarian slugfest. We are gonna bring in pro-libertarian party libertarians against anti-libertarian party libertarians, and we will finish it all off by bringing people who are completely against libertarians to then speak with all those libertarians together. That's the slugfest. So that's gonna be
Kumite.
Yes,
Kumite.
that's gonna be.
You need to bring
Molyneux.
Lev, can you bring Molyneux on, please? Save his career from complete.
Well, his stock is way down, so he'll probably come on the show.
Yeah, he'll do. He
probably would.
He'll get down and suck.
Oh God!
Whoa!
Oh God!
All
right, guys, take care. This is great. Thank you very much. Bye, bye, guys. Don't forget to
time.
subscribe. Subscribe.